Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Friday. It's my favorite day. And my camera seems a little off. There we go. Okay, fantastic. Welcome to another Friday. It's Fundamentalist Fails Day. I love today because we get into it. And today we have the Dream Team. Yes, Frank Turek and Kirk Cameron. I will loosely call the Dream Team. The maybe Nightmare Team. I don't know. It's absolutely rotten. But I do want to open up. I am so insanely proud of the Australians today. Just it was something that I wanted to mention midweek when I do my aimbot show, but I didn't mention. There was a massive, huge protest in Sydney. I'm so proud of all my fellow countrymen, all my fellow people standing up for our fellow humans on the other side of the world. I am so insanely proud. I just want to share a little bit of this protest because the police said there was like sort of 100,000 people. The independent reports disagree. They say it was closer to 300,000, and sort of so independence reports but I want to show you this because this is insane. So Sydney is a city of about 5 million people. Okay, about 5 million roughly. To have like 300,000, that is a sizable chunk of the population. I want to show you this. This is really cool. Look at that. That is awesome. So this is a pro-Palestinian protest to stop, well, people being genocided in Gaza. This, gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest. Democracy Manifest. Yes, this is Australians getting together. I love it. I think it's amazing. I wasn't aware of one in Perth. If there was one, I certainly would be there. Look at that. Like, I loved that we've now got drones to show the scope of some of these things. I mean, it is insane how many people are out there. Like, it is insane. And sort of, so what I also wanted to share was sort of the reaction that our Sky News made to it. Like, this is the right-wing news. It's like our version of Fox News. It's absolutely crap. Like shit like this. Hang on a sec. I got to show this because this is just terrible. You know, Sydney Harbour Bridge closed for hours. They shut down the harbour bridge. Traffic chaos. Well, you know, I'm sorry that the genocide in Gaza and the protest over it has made you late for work. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry that the traffic is bad when all these people in the world are dying and starving. You know, I'm sorry, not sorry. Like, seriously, you know, I really wonder sometimes at the callousness of some people. Like, really, I wonder, and you know, they're kind of, you know, I it's absolutely crap. And I scrolled through their headings, and it's all like, oh, protesters cause chaos, and you know, bridge closed. Uh, So what? So fucking what? Who cares? I don't, you know, I don't care. Oh, if you're wondering what ever happened to Julian Assange, Julian Assange was in that protest as well. Um, Give me one sec. I did have a clip of this. So if so, Julian Assange was the WikiLeaks founder. He published a whole lot of stuff, and I've got mixed opinions of Julian Assange. I think that as a journalist, I think, you know, he's kind of terrible. As he was more an activist than a journalist, and I think that caused problems, like especially for him. Here we go. Yeah, so if you've been wondering what Julian Assange has been doing, he was in the protest. So Julian Assange, he's a bit of a weird one. So he opened the WikiLeaks thing. He was prone towards sensationalism. He was prone towards this sort of conspiracy stuff kind of thing. I he was arrested and convicted for like some kind of crime in England kind of thing. I really think he can be a bit of a despicable human being because of sort of what he was convicted for. But he was sort of sentenced he was sort of extradited to America for breaking some kind of bullshit privacy laws and stuff. I think that, I'm glad that he's back in Australia. He is an Australian citizen. He's one of ours. So, what the hell are you doing with him? He's not a combatant. He's not a war criminal. He's not anything of the sort. The idea that he's not deported because he is an Australian citizen is fucking shocking to me. So I'm glad that he's back in Australia. So if you're wondering what Assange has been doing, apparently he's been protesting for Palestine. And, I may disagree with a lot of the things that he does and says, but I don't disagree with him on that. Like, and the way that it's being framed as anti-Semitism is really making me mad. Like, this is not anti-Semitism, and it's not directed at Jewish people. Okay, and Fox News is running, Jewish people are scared in Sydney because of these protests. There was Jewish people in the protest. This is the thing. Even Jewish people go, hey, this is war crimes, like it's only the extreme right of Israel that is behind. This is disgusting, and it's against international law. I really am pissed off about how the Fox News of Australia, so Timu Fox News, which is called Sky, is casting this thing as, no one supports this, and it's just, all of this stuff. Yeah, exactly, Jedi. Support the people, not the government, because the government is well out of order. Look, this is something that I said on Wednesday during Aimbot. We cannot confuse the people with the government. There's things that my government does that I absolutely hate, but it doesn't mean that you can come and starve Australians. And there's things that the Palestinians, that their government, like ostensibly being Hamas kind of, that they don't like. But you can't just go and destroy all of them and genocide them because of what their government's doing. That's not cool. No, we're not taking Ken Ham, Mama. There's no way. No, I draw the line there. No, you can keep him. You can keep that guy. Oh, look. Hamas is a disgusting organization. That doesn't mean that the Palestinian people should be wiped out. Like, come on now. This is ridiculous. We cannot treat civilians as if they are, terrorists. Children are starving over there. How do you think, like, the international human rights and international aid workers have said there are children that will die because they are malnourished and they cannot get food there fast enough. It's a horrible situation. But I do want to say I am so proud of my countrymen for standing up. And they were talking in the courts about not allowing this protest. So I want to share this with you just to see where Australia is at, right? So this is basically what happened. The court was urged to allow Harbour Bridge protest or risk powder keg. Yeah. So this is what happens when you start to say, hey, you can't protest, you can't use your democratic voice. Things will turn nasty because they're going to go anyway. People would have gone anyway. They could have said, oh, it's against the law. People would still go, right? Like, people would absolutely go. And there was no violence. There was not a single thing of violence. Some people burnt the Australian flag. Give a shit. Like, I don't care. Why would I care? It's just a flag. It's just a flag. Like, seriously, they want to express their anger at the lack of action by Australia because their relatives, their people are dying. They're being slaughtered and dying of starvation. I get that they're angry at the country. Why would I care if they burn it's just a flag. Okay, if they're burning people, yeah, I'd be angry, but it's just a flag. Relax, okay? No one's getting hurt. It's a flag, all right? No one's getting hurt. Nobody's saying, hey, let's overthrow the government. It's just an expression of anger. We get it. It's okay. We'll survive this. It's all right. And a lot of people there, you know, they're angry at the government not doing sanctions as well. Look, why do we sanction Russia for doing war crimes kind of thing? But Israel is just, we hand them weapons. The Australian government has already handed down a moratorium on weapons kind of thing, but there are private companies that find loopholes and stuff. It needs to be cut out. Like, if Israel cannot use its toys correctly, we got to take away their toys. Like, seriously, what are you doing? What are you doing? They've already committed multiple breaches of international law. They've used the Red Crescent as a tactical facade. That's against the Geneva Convention. They've used starvation as a weapon. That's against the Geneva Convention. They hit the headquarters of the Red Crescent with artillery strikes. That is so far against international law, it doesn't even qualify anymore. Like, seriously. It's like Benjamin Netanyahu has gone, well, I want to, you know, I want to be the greatest, you know, greatest international lawbreaker in history. Like, hold my beer. I'm going to go for all the laws. Like, seriously, what are we doing here, people? But I'm glad people are standing up, and people feel strongly about it, you know? People feel very strongly. Hold it. I don't have my light on. I'm a bad streamer. There we go. There we go. I look much more beautiful. But thank you. But, you know, having said that, I don't want to bring everyone down. Just, you know, I'm glad that people are standing up. I'm so proud of everybody that was there that day. I love that it was a 300,000 people strong, but absolutely no violence, except if you're counting, you know, a few people shouting death to the IDF and burning the Australian flag as violence, which I don't. I count that as artistic expression kind of thing. And they're mad. I get it. Hey, have you ever said things that you regret when you're mad? I have, sure. You know, and they're very angry, and I get why. I'm angry. Fuck it. I'm angry. I'm angry that we have rules regarding civilians and people that have no influence at all. They're powerless. They're not in charge. They're the ones getting it right now. And, you know, Israel is just, well, we're going to clear them out of there, which is ethnic cleansing. And it's just, it's reprehensible. But I don't want to go on about this forever, but thank you for listening to my rant. I feel like ranting about it because, look, I definitely don't agree with everything that Hamas does. Hamas is a horrible organization, but the ordinary Palestinian people, they do not deserve this. No, not this. This is way beyond getting back hostages or making yourself fake. This is not defense. This is genocide, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop. But, you know, what can we do? What can we do? But thank you all for being here. It is my favorite day. Oh, I've got some super chats in the meantime. While I've been ranting, we've got Yahooligan for 22 months. I'm leaving for BajaCon in the morning. You can't wait. Oh, awesome. Absolutely awesome. I do want to see some footage there, Justin. I absolutely do. You are required to show me so I can live vicariously through your experiences. I can live vicariously because I definitely can't make it. Look, I will try for next year. I 100%, I will try. It's just a very long way and it's very expensive. So, hey, you know, get your government to help Australians come and visit. Work on your tourist stuff. Oh, look, I could easily get into Canada. Commonwealth countries, Australian passport. It's pretty good. I'd have to renew my passport, but that's okay. I mean, I'd be happy to do that. I'd love to see Canada. It's one of the things I'd absolutely love to see Canada. Um, Left-handed Jedi says, would 19 months? Yeah, Jedi. Thank you so much. Thanks to Justin, and thank you so much, mate. You're here, you're present, you're always commenting. I love what you've got to say. Really appreciate all of your support. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, people aren't their government. Yeah, exactly, AJ. Yeah. We all don't like things our government does, but it's also I mean, it is kind of counterintuitive, but it's also the case that if when you start to attack people, they will turn to forms of government that they may not otherwise support. Like we saw this in Iran, where the Americans instituted the Shah, who was a tyrannical despot, overthrew their democratically elected government and installed a despot, and they turned to the Ayatollah and the religious extremists to protect them against the US involvement. They will turn to these governments if you do this stuff. And so attacking the Palestinian people, you might think, oh, well, that will weaken them. They will turn to things like Hamas. They will, because they will see that as the only thing protecting them. It's so bad. It's just horrible what's happened to them, and I, it makes me sad. But I don't want everyone to be sad. I want everyone to be happy, and so we've got a couple of, quite frankly, idiots here. Kirk Cameron, if you're unfamiliar with him, he was I mean, I don't think you'd be unfamiliar. I know my audience, and you're pretty well on the ball about these people. Kirk Cameron was basically a childhood, a childhood star, I guess. I'm using that term very loosely, like very loosely. Childhood star, I guess. Who? So he kind of. I tell you what, I might spotlight the entire thing. No, that's not what I'm after. That's not what I'm after. I can show Chad. So this is Frank Turek. He was, I think, I can't remember what his education was in. It was in something marketing or something, right? Which kind of makes sense. I think it was like marketing and business. So he sort of started up a Christian apologetics a bit later in his life, and then said a whole bunch of dumb stuff, basically. He basically is just an apologist first and foremost, but he's an apologist that is good at marketing himself, and he is a good speaker. He's a good speaker. He occasionally tells jokes that I even laugh at. Like he's actually very good at speaking, but it is his logic and his reasoning which is pretty bad. Pretty bad. Yeah. So he earned a Master of Public Administration. So I guess that would be some kind of, I guess it'd be like business administration, but like I said, but more in the public sector. So, yeah. Okay. Just Kings Mason. I'll just explain what I understand these to be. So the state is all of the government and government apparatus. So when you're talking about the state, you're talking about not only the government, but also the bureaucracy, things that support the state, all of the industry, like the say in America, the military industrial complex, right? The state is everything. The government is the branch of sort of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. So when you're talking about the state, you're talking about not only those branches of government, but also all of the bureaucracy, so police force, fire, government-run hospitals, everything that the government owns and runs, so roads, all the entire apparatus of the nation, basically, all the apparatus. So parks, from everybody from the highest to the lowest, right? When you're talking about government, you're only talking about the people elected or positioned in those three branches. So the government is different. And then the executive is the ones actually running things. They're the actual ones in power. So the state can be a problem. Like, don't get me wrong, it absolutely can, but it's usually just the government that's the problem. Because your average person out there, the average police officer may not hold with what his government is doing, but he's still part of the state. It's just a distinction that the state is not the government, which is not the nation, which is not the people. So the people are the body outside of the state, right? So just your average people. And I guess it can include, parts of the state, but it's generally the people that are outside the branches of government, essentially. Yeah, so there's a big distinction about that. But I get what you're saying. So this is Frank Turek, and Frank Turek, I find, and we're going to see the problems with his reasoning today. It's not a huge clip, but it's basically the name of it is sort of Questions to Reveal the Proof of God, and he kind of references his book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, which is, it's really funny what he says, but I'll sort of touch on that. But his I don't have enough faith to be an atheist is kind of weird. Atheists generally don't use faith to support their views. Certainly not faith as defined in, sort of Christian circles. In the Bible, faith is defined, or it says that faith is it's evidence of things unseen, and God, what's the thing? It's substance of things hoped for and evidence of things unseen, right? So the funny thing is that, and you know what, it was a Christian that pointed it out to me. Things that you hope for don't have substance, and things that you that are unseen or unobserved don't have evidence, right? So he said, well, it's a paradox, but I'm thinking more, well, it doesn't make any sense then. Paradoxes don't make sense. It's not really a paradox. It's basically saying, hey, it's unjustified confidence, right? Evidence of things, substance of things hoped for. Well, things hoped for don't have substance, so it doesn't exist. And evidence of things unseen. Well, things unseen or unobserved don't have evidence. They're not evident. There's no evidence. So that's, it's not just a paradox. It is like sort of putting your faith. But other people use what faith is, right? If you want to define faith as justified confidence, then yeah, atheists have justified confidence. But I think that they're sort of changing what faith is at that point. That isn't how I would describe faith. I would describe faith as confidence without the justification. Like, you have to overcome that sort of doubt in order to have faith. I don't think sort of a justified confidence with it is faith, but some Christians disagree. But it depends how he's using it. I think that he's using it in the Christian sense. That we think that, oh, we're an atheist because, we have this confidence that doesn't have any justification that there is no God. Well, hold on a second. Does that mean I have faith in Bigfoot as well, or that there is no Bigfoot? Or faith that there is no alien abductions. Like I don't see that being particularly compelling. So it's just a catch cry. Now the other guy in here is Kirk Cameron, and Kirk Cameron was a child star kind of thing. I think that's the best way to describe him. He did I think it was Growing Pains, and he was sort of the young, hot, awesome guy in Growing Pains. He then sort of just went to Christianity and has never um, really done anything since. Like he really has just been on the God bus, as we say in Australia, ever since. Yeah, Growing Pains. Yep. So he did a few films, and then he just did evangelical stuff from then on in. So apparently he was an atheist in his early teens, and I think that I kind of, so Kirk Cameron's a funny one. I don't like what he does because he is a fundamentalist Christian that does a lot of horrible things and says a lot of horrible things. But I think that sort of in his life, he was an atheist while young, child star. And a lot of these child stars, and there's definitely been a sort of pushback against them that, hey, they get their childhoods taken away from them. They, the whole thing about, Miley Cyrus turning to doing a lot of drugs and stuff, and the Disney stars always going out and doing that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens to young child stars that is kind of, they're not equipped to deal with, So I think that he sort of was an atheist, did a whole load of stuff that wasn't particularly fulfilling, and decided he would go into religion, where he sort of, that can kind of taint or cloud your opinion of say atheism and what it means, to mean, oh, well, you just do whatever you want kind of thing. And that isn't what atheism proffers. It doesn't have any kind of moral system. It doesn't have any kind of, well, this should be good to do and this won't be good to do. I believe that him and Ray Comfort, who I did last week, and I did this because I did do Ray Comfort last week, and I call anything that I do on Ray Comfort, I call extreme discomfort. And they came up with the crocoduck, that they wanted to see a crocoduck, and sort of these two have been a joke in the evolution circles because they are so bad. Him and Ray Comfort, Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort, have been the worst things ever. Like they're just terrible, absolutely terrible. Just freaking awful. But yeah, and that they were the origin of they wanted to see a crocoduck. Like, why doesn't a crocoduck exist? Well, you don't understand evolution. That's why. Okay, so I know that's where that comes from. I know where that comes from, so I'm not going to fall for that. There is no such thing as Alder's razor. You're being trollish, and I get it. I get it. I get it. It's fun to troll the creationists, yeah. Kevin, yeah. So Kevin Sorbo, or Hercules as he's known, yeah. No, there is a sort of cadre of stars that kind of, I'm waiting for Chris Pratt to go into apologetics. Once he has a problem. Like he'll run into problems. There is a cadre of stars that will just go into evangelical ministry when it gets too hard or whatever. But on the flip side, there is a whole bunch of people. Like I got to say, I saw an ad, and my wife sent it to me, of Samuel L. Jackson. And if you don't know, look, Samuel L. Jackson. There's some movies I love of his, some movies I hate. Right? Like there's some movies that are great, some not so much, But I do look. I used to think he was a one-note actor. He just played himself, right? Until I saw Kingsman, and he played a totally different character, and I was blown away by how different he was. I thought it was great. It was fantastic. Totally awesome. Yeah, just happy with it. But he does a lot of charity work that he doesn't talk about, right? Like, he gives a lot to charity, and this only came out when Denzel Washington sort of told everybody sort of during a roast, and he doesn't talk about it. Like, I mean, what a guy. But he did a chip commercial, right, recently. If you haven't seen it, I really want to show it. I'll probably get demonetized for it. But I mean, you know, he's got flack, but Chris Pratt become a politician? Maybe. Chris Pratt, he can be funny, but I think that his sort of, you know, he kind of is getting worse and worse with the whole Christianity thing. You know, I got nothing against him. I got nothing against him. Nothing against him whatsoever. You know, yeah. Just I expect that if he ever does anything that is controversial, he's just going to run to the Christian, you know, evangelical stuff, and, you know, kind of say that's all he's interested in. I don't know. Anyway, so that's Kirk Cameron, who I kind of feel sorry for. He was a child star. I think that some people were really abused as children in Hollywood. Absolutely. Like, not only do we have the receipts, you know, they don't turn out well sometimes. I think that a lot more protection has to be given to minors working in Hollywood, because the experiences that they're exposed to, and some of the scenes that they're exposed to. Oh, thank you so much, Jedi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. In case I get demonetized, well, I'm going to have to show it now. I did have a problem finding it. I'll try going to YouTube. So if you haven't seen this, I really want to show it, because Jedi is awesome. But thank you so much, Jedi. It's really appreciated. Yeah. Okay, so this is the ad. I'll put the sound on. Fuck it.
Wind farms.
Yeah, so if you're unfamiliar with this thing, just to give you a quick overview, it's sort of joking. Thank you so much, Jedi. You are a mensch. Like, seriously, absolutely. Thank you so much. You don't have to do that, though. I'll take the risk. I don't care. Look, there's so much more I could be doing if I wanted. Like, I was accused after doing, like, the Wilson debate of, you want to be an influencer. It's like, I don't even know. Not really. I'm just getting out here and saying what I think. I don't want to be an influencer. I don't want to be huge. I don't want to be, no, that's, like, if you know me, like, you'll know that that's ridiculous. But thank you. I really appreciate it, mate. I really do. But this is so Donald Trump was over in Scotland, went to a golf course. It is possible, right? It is possible that Donald Trump is anti-environmentalism for the stupidest reason you've ever heard of. Okay, and that's because apparently when he made this Scottish golf course, apparently there was a big court case because he would have destroyed the ecology. Guess what? The golf course destroyed, like, the ecology of the place, because of course it freaking did. But anyway, there was also a court case because he didn't want wind turbines to be in view of his golf course because it spoiled the view. And this comes back to, like, that thing with Palestine, right? Like, people protest, and Fox News, Sky News, it's the same freaking thing, honestly. Sky News says, oh, they held up the traffic. Who gives a fuck about the traffic? Who gives a shit about your view, mate? No one cares, okay? Nobody cares about your freaking view on your golf course. We're worried about global, like, climate change. Like, stop being an ass. Anyway, so he had this lawsuit going against these companies, and they put them in it. They won the lawsuit. They didn't win the lawsuit to stop the golf course, but they won the one to put in the wind farms, and he's been complaining about them ever since. So Donald Trump's complaints on wind farms may in fact be that he doesn't like the view. Like, I'm serious. Like, his anti-environmentalism may be spurned by him losing to a environmental energy company putting up wind turbines. I mean, of all the stupid reasons to, be against renewable power, that's got to be the stupidest. But it could well be the case. Would Donald Trump be that petty? Absolutely.
Loud, ugly, harmful to nature.
Who says that?
Donald Trump says that, and it's total bullshit. Like, you can see these offshore wind farms, you don't hear them. They're not harmful to nature. They're not harmful to nature at all. In fact, they help nature, and he mentions that kind of thing.
These giants are standing tall against fossil fuels, rising up out of the ocean like a middle finger to CO2.
Yes, a middle finger to CO2. Who wrote this? They're an absolute champ.
Deep beneath the waves, they can become artificial reefs, creating habitats for sea life to grow.
Yes, they become artificial reefs. They actually encourage sea life because they provide a secure place for things like algae to grow. That's food for some fish. It creates like crevices where they can hide. Like, it actually encourages sea life because it's like an artificial reef. We've done studies on this. It actually helps wildlife in the air. And they sort of say, oh, well, it stops whales from being able to navigate. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that at all, right? That the sounds above the water carry there's absolutely zero evidence. And, we think that boats probably cause more to disrupt whale song than these things do. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
These are wind farm seaweed snacks made with seaweed grown at a Vattenfall wind farm. Serious gourmet. So, what's it gonna be? Mother wind farms or wind farms?
Yeah, and that's the ad basic. And don't get me wrong, I mean, he is an actor, he does get paid, but I will say that he does do a lot for charity. And I had no idea until I saw Denzel Washington stand there and say, hey, he contributes all of this money to various charities, does not say a word about it. He never brags, he never boasts. He is just a guy who works hard and gives to... Like, I respect it, man. I respect it. Absolutely. And a lot of it is stuff like, black college funds and things like that for African Americans that are struggling. And look, I'm right on board, man. Right on board. Oh, thank you so much, Stop the Stupidity. We've got something that isn't stupid is getting a Mark Reed readership for yourself. And Stop the Stupidity is helping out with that. And as per usual, I've got to go through who gets the readerships. But thank you very much, STS. Really appreciate it. Always a pleasure, my friend. So this one's for you, mate. It is... Jack-o'-lantern, my unfinished journey. Austin Sims, Anarchic Fox, and Carlos, unpronounceable Japanese characters. All right. Thank you so much, Stop the Stupidity. I really appreciate it. And just for the funsies, I think I've got another thing now that you've reminded me. Look, I haven't even got onto the video I was doing. This is great. Look, if I never get to this video, I think I'm delaying it. I think I'm actually so over Turek and Kirk Cameron. I'm just delaying. I don't want to get there. But I do have 5, so I'm going to send them out. On your way. Godspeed. Godspeed, readerships. There we go. It's coming out. Oh, we got some hits. But thank you so much, Stop. And thank you for reminding me that I can give out readerships, because I totally forgot about them. Like, seriously, as I said, my ADHD has been kicking my ass lately. I won't lie. I've been struggling a bit, but you know, I'm doing my best, and that's all I can do. So I'm here. I'm doing it. I'm gonna continue to fight. I'm gonna continue to talk. Try and stop me. Never happen. I don't care if there's like 2 people and a dog in the audience. I'll be still sitting here talking. You can't stop me. Well, I mean, you probably can, but you won't stop me, because I will be there. I will be there. So thank you, Mark Reed. You know, how often do you thank yourself? I realized this, like I was doing yoga a while back, and the yoga teacher's like, thank yourself for doing this. How often do you thank yourself for like doing the dishes or cleaning up, or, you know, getting stuff done, like going and, you know, to the doctor and stuff and getting checked up? How often do you thank yourself? Maybe you should. I think we don't thank ourselves enough. Anyway, that is Desmond Harrison, Neddy, Dave Cannabis, Gazalum, Ayo, and Spider 33. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark Reed. And thank you, Stop the Stupidity. Oh, all the readerships are going out. They're outbound and wild. But I love that they're selling chips made from algae that are farmed from the output of wind turbines. I mean, it is so great. Like, it could not be any more green. Like, seriously, renewable energy, renewable products. What are we doing? What are we doing here? And see, this is the things that give me hope. I've learned recently that they've come out with an alternative to plastic that's based upon bioorganics. I mean, we are creative, amazing monkeys, and we should be doing more of this stuff. It is so good. It is so good. You know, like stuff like this. And at the end of the day, we don't know who will come up with this stuff. We've got to invest in our own integrity, our own creativity. Like, why are we doing things that we know harm us, when we can be doing stuff like this instead? Look, I'm all for it. I don't know where to buy those chips. They're Ventrol chips. Ventafol chips. I suddenly want to buy some. Like, seriously, I'm there. I'm there. Look, as long as they taste good. Don't get me wrong. If they taste like ass, I'm not interested. But I really do. You know, algae chips from a wind turbine. Yeah, I'm interested. Color me interested. No, we created a bacteria to eat ocean plastic. Somebody sort of produced that rather than it evolved naturally, Jedi. I think, anyway. That's the best of my knowledge. Look, correct me if I'm wrong. Definitely correct me if I'm wrong. So, yeah. Okay, let's get on to Frank Turek, because these arguments are terrible and I feel like a laugh now. But, hey, look, I'm giving you horrible stuff. I'm talking about Palestine and stuff, but also don't forget that there's people out there doing amazing things, and we don't have to give up. Don't give up. There are people out there, you know, we're building wind turbines and eating chips that have been, you know, ecologically friendly chips that have been grown from the algae you know, come on, we're amazing as well. So don't give up, don't give in. We need to stand against the horrible, but don't think that everything is horrible. Okay, there are people out there doing things that are incredible. Okay, don't lose heart. Believe in us, because you know, don't count the human race out yet. All right, we're just getting started. We just need to guide towards the things that are good for our own well-being, the well-being of the planet. That's all we've got to do. Just stop doing bad things for people's well-being. Start doing the good stuff. That's it. That's all. And I know that in the great scheme of things, we're only tiny cogs, but look at what happens when we get together. Fantastic stuff. Awesome. So don't lose heart, okay? I don't want you to lose heart.
The greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If that verse is true, every other verse is at least possible, including the verses that talk about him rising from the dead.
Okay. Let's break that down. Takeaways with Kirk Cameron. This is dodgy takeaway, all right? This is not ecologically sourced chips, all right? Like, seriously. Look, that if the first verse is true, right? That if is doing some real heavy lifting there. If the first verse is true, God created everything, then everything else is possible. But what do you mean possible, right? Like, because there's a number of different possibles that people go to. There's logically possible, i.e. there's nothing illogical about it. So if I say, hey, I'm a married bachelor, that's logically impossible, right? It's not possible logically. But like everything else, unless it's like a paradox or in some way a logical contradiction, everything's possible. So it doesn't say a lot, right? It just doesn't say a lot. Do you mean it's physically possible? Well, yeah, with a miracle, anything's physically possible. Like, there doesn't seem to be a lot of constraint for that. But the whole point is that he's saying, if that first verse is true, okay, how do you show that that is in fact true so I should believe it? He doesn't say.
Why do you think so many Christians, when they're asked questions, or even when they're trying to initiate the conversation with the gospel, get so...
Yeah, and while you're there, subscribe and like and hit the bell. Sure, I'm gonna use their graphic to promote my channel. What a scumbag. Yeah, I know. Look, it's on the screen. I'm commenting. Why are Christians afraid to answer questions? Well, it's because religion can get you into a few circles that don't make a lot of sense. You know, sort of the idea that your book is correct and holy and you know, inerrant and somebody else's isn't is a hard question to answer. There are very hard questions that religions have to answer. The problem of evil, for instance, is an incredibly difficult question that I don't think has been satisfactorily answered by any theist. I think that William Lane Craig sort of had the best attempt at it, and he just had to say, hey, bad things are good. I mean, horrifying, but okay.
So defensive with atheists or critics? Why do we feel so wrapped up tight and get defensive about stuff when we know the truth?
Yeah, I think part of the problem...
I've actually said that. So this isn't that bad a point, right? I've sort of said, why do they get so angry if they know that this is true? And it's because, well, I think, this is just my opinion, of course. I don't know that for sure. But I think that the way, number one, their identity is largely based upon it. Their entire self-identity is based upon this being true, that they're going to have a life after death, that they're going to be saved, that people who are Christian are morally superior. They have an identity grounded in it and centered around it. And anytime somebody attacks an identity that you or something that you've formed an identity around, you always don't feel happy about it. You feel upset about it because that's your identity they're attacking. They react very hostile when you say, hey, I just don't believe you. I don't believe that the God is true or whatever. But I think it is a good question. If they've got access to this amazing God, and if it is true, why are they getting angry? Is a good question. I It's a good question, isn't it? I think it's also because a lot of Christianity and a lot of religions in general, they react. So doubt is the thing that they don't want to get a hold of them. They don't want to doubt things. They don't want to question things. They don't want even that to creep in. So when somebody causes them to doubt, instead of going, well, there is sufficient reason to question what it is that I believe, they say, how dare you make me question what I believe? And look, the secret is no one makes you do anything. They bring up points and you start to question naturally, because that is what a rational mind will do when presented with an irrational belief. It will start to question. Things like cognitive dissonance, right? Like that's also a factor. So cognitive dissonance, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's holding two completely antithetical ideas in your mind at the same time. So the idea that God is good and God slaughters Canaanites, that causes cognitive dissonance, right? It is this two ideas that are so in conflict that it causes people, and they will react angrily to it. They will react unpredictably to it. That's not a bad thing. It means that they're starting to question why it is that they hold this one belief or both beliefs, but it sometimes causes anger and lashing out at the person who is, in fact, just making reasonable questions.
Problem is that we can't imagine how somebody couldn't agree with us, which I find actually kind of odd, Kirk.
Well, there are some people whose position is that everyone agrees with them, which is funny because Kirk Cameron, I mean, he is part of the Ray Comfort circle that sort of says, hey, everyone knows God exists. They're just suppressing that knowledge in unrighteousness, right? That is the quote that they use, and that's what Ray Comfort keeps saying. Everybody knows that God exists. They're just suppressing the truth in their heart through unrighteousness, to be unrighteous. So it's so odd that he's sitting there going, well, why are we surprised if people don't believe the same things we do? You literally think everyone believes that, Kirk Cameron. Like, you think that, knowledge is justified true belief. So if people know about the God, they believe in them as well. They have to, because knowledge is a subset of belief. How you could know something but don't believe in it, I don't know how that works. Because as knowledge is justified true belief, you would have to believe in order to know something.
People always ask me, you go to these college campuses and sometimes these students get hostile. Why do you not get mad at them? And I say to them, I'm 62 years old now. When I was 22,
Okay. In fairness, he does look good for 62. Okay, he does. I don't know what he's doing. I know that he's had some kind of gender-affirming work, but maybe he's had other work. I don't know, but he does look good for 62. I will say that. I hope I look that good at 62.
didn't agree with my 62-year-old self. So why should I expect some 22-year-old kid right now to agree with my 62-year-old self? I wasn't a Christian at 22. Why should I expect this kid to be a Christian now? I don't know what family he's come from, what he's seen, what he's experienced, what he's thought about, what he's read or haven't read. He may really, and I'm sure probably really does believe that what he believes is true.
Yeah, seeing Frank Turek be empathic is kind of unsettling. Look, I like what he's saying. I honestly do. Like, hey, full credit. He's saying, hey, I don't know your life. I don't know who you are, kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. But he's sort of saying, but that kid should believe what I believe because of these reasons. And his reasons are kind of appalling. And some of the ways that he treats some people is appalling. Okay, it is. To sort of speak as he does out about gay people and trans people and things like that is appalling. And we've got to remember that. The empathy with Frank Turek only seems to extend to people that he kind of approves of, right? Or he believes should be under the Christian umbrella. Others, he kind of speaks about them very, very badly.
So I shouldn't expect him to agree with me.
Yeah.
And I remember Paul saying that God treated me with grace, even though I was an insolent and arrogant man at one point. And I think we need to remember that. When we're talking to people, we shouldn't expect them to agree with us. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't expect people to agree with me. It's nice to hear that, but it's sort of, he's talking to Kirk Cameron, who, really, as I want to reiterate, him and Ray Comfort think that everybody knows that a God exists. They not only expect people to agree with them, they project onto the person they're talking to what they know and then tell them, you're just denying this. So it's really weird to see. And this was from like a year ago. Okay, so this is 1 year ago. I've had this in my playlist for ages because I remember seeing it and going, I really want to talk about this, but, other stuff came up. But anyway, I really want to talk about this. He's talking to a guy who has professed, hey, people already believe, you've just got to remind them. It's wild, right? Like,
simply try and find out why they believe what they believe. That's why I ask them a lot of questions.
Yeah.
You're saying, there can't be a good God because there's too much evil in the world. Well, what do you mean by evil? Tell me what.
Yeah, so Frank Turek, he tries to pretend like he's, doing the Socratic method. All I do is ask them a lot of questions, but he doesn't. If you've ever watched his stuff, he starts out like that, but a lot of the time he just goes to these declarations, right? Like to these, he'll ask, well, what is this? What is the morality? And then he'll just go to, well, you can't have morality, and then lay it down. So he's kind of trying to project this image of, I'm just a guy asking questions. He doesn't. He absolutely doesn't.
What evil is, because they're not going to be able to explain what evil is without reference to good. And if they reference good, they're back to God, because there's no such thing as good in an objective sense unless God exists.
Who said it has to be objective? Who said so? You said so? Look, it would be nice if there was an objective good and evil, but I don't think there is, right? The whole idea of, well, there's like what I hold dear and what most people hold dear is the safety, security, the well-being of all of their friends, family, country, society. I extend it to all of humanity, and that's what secular humanism is about. So things are good if they work in the interest of human well-being, and they're bad if they work against it. And they're evil if they are bad intentionally. There is intent behind it to make things worse for human well-being. That's it. That is how I define evil. It is a very clear definition in virtue or based upon what I want or what this moral structure wants. Right? So I can say, hey, this is evil because you are in, like, just say, Benjamin Netanyahu is stopping aid from going to the people of Gaza. Yes, this is evil because you are intentionally harming the well-being of humans. Very simple to understand, and they would just go, but that's not objective. Yeah, I'm aware. I am aware. But in some way, we've got to make societies work, right? That you're not going to be able to convert the Palestinian people. It's not going to happen. We've got to all at least agree that human well-being is important, that's an important thing. And most people do. It's ubiquitous. Nearly everybody does. Then you get religious people, where human well-being is not as important as the glory of God.
Good is the only way we'd even know what evil was. So sometimes just by asking a few questions, you can get them to realize that the assumption under.
And I must add that Frank Turek has had his ass kicked on this point all up and down the debate sphere, right? Like people saying, hey, we can define good. We define it as this. This is what gets me about apologists. They will make some sort of point in a debate, get spanked on it, concede it, then when they go out to somewhere else, look, maybe what I saw about Frank Turek getting, his ass kicked was after this interview, but they will still go out and make the same points to their flock or their followers or whoever, because getting their followers active and up in arms about their religion is more important to them than actually representing, say, something like morality correctly. Like, if you have a code of conduct, then that is morality.
Underneath their question is false.
Yes. It took me a lot of years of watching videos of guys like you and Ray Comfort and understanding presuppositions and all of that stuff to even be able to understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, understanding presuppositions, like, presuppositionalism is the worst apologetic. Look, I've said it before. I said it in a debate recently, okay? This is a Mark Reed quote. You can quote me on this, all right? Presuppositionalism is the Steven Seagal of apologetics. Okay, you can quote me on that. Presup is the Steven Seagal of apologetics. It's heavy on claims, light on demonstrations, right? It makes a lot of claims, never demonstrates that they're actually true. You can take that away from me.
But I think a lot of us get defensive because we're afraid that somebody's going to unravel my faith with a question that I can't answer.
Could be. That's okay. There's a lot of questions I can't answer. Actually, when I get a question I can't answer,
yeah, and that's the anger, right? Like, that's what I said earlier. They're afraid that doubt's going to creep in, that they're going to have to question what they've already believed. Now, some of us, like the atheists generally, not all of them, but, you know, what we try to do is embrace that questioning. Say, do I have a foundation? Do I have a reason for believing what I believe? We embrace that. You know, Presup is the only apologetic? No, there's evidentialists as well. I don't know why. Ray Comfort's movie, Audacity, it's absolutely terrible. Yeah, and I know that he brought out Banana Man as well. Like, he leaned into the Banana Man thing. No, there's evidentialist Kings Mason. They're apologetics, you know, sort of evidentialists sort of go, you know, they have the theological argument, the fine-tuning argument is what it's called. You know, the cosmological argument. They've got, you know, they've got Bible, they've got miracles. That's the evidentialists. The presups are the ones that go, well, we're going to assume morality comes from God, or transcendence comes from God, and we're going to assume everybody knows it, kind of thing. That's the presups. They presuppose that some contingent thing in the universe comes from a god, and they will just presuppose that up front. Yeah. I mean, they're using evidence, yes. Like, so I don't think it's good evidence. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, because if you're talking about, like, you know, biblical evidence kind of thing, if you're talking about, well, Jesus rose from the dead and this is an argument for how we know kind of thing, that's not presupposing it. No. That's basically saying, hey, there's a book written, you know, or the watchmaker fallacy. Yeah, exactly. That's not presup either. You're basically saying, hey, there's evidence that things are designed. I mean, it's a dumb argument, like, granted, but things are designed, so therefore there must be a designer. That's not presup. Presup would be, there's a designer, so these things are designed. Okay, that's presup. It is the dumbest thing out there. But, you know, don't get me wrong, Kings Mason. I totally agree. They're bad arguments, bad evidence, but they're not presupposition. Presuppositional is dumber than you can imagine. It is so much dumber than evidentialist arguments.
Normally say, you should have asked me that when I was 17, because I knew everything when I was 17. Somehow I've forgotten.
Yeah.
So, but.
Yeah, sure. I thought you said I'll reach out to you from bathroom. I was like, wow, you wanna hold hands while you take a dump? No, you're just saying have to go. Yeah, sure. Do you want a live stream? Oh, that would be so good. I would be so happy to do that. I would be so happy. Yeah, I would love to. I would love to.
There's questions all of us can't answer. But I think what we need to remember, Kirk, is that we ought not let what we don't know cause us to doubt what we do know. And
okay, so think about that, and I want to have him say that again. Okay.
I think what we need to remember, Kirk, is that we ought not let what we don't know cause us to doubt what we do know. And there's a lot we do know.
Oh boy. Oh boy, let's not let what we don't know cause us to doubt what we do know. So basically he's saying, good night, Justin. Take care, man. Love to do it. Reach out to me. So that's the thing. You're saying we don't know all these things, but let's not doubt what we've already come to our conclusion on, right? Like we've come to a conclusion that it's God. But we can't answer all of these things and can't explain how it makes sense and can't, conquer the problem of evil or explain how things were done. Let's not let that allow us to question our God belief. And I think this is the worst thing ever. So if you're familiar with sort of philosophy of science, everything is up for questioning, right? Everything, we question everything again and again and again. We keep questioning. We keep doubting, going back, making sure what we've got is correct. It's the only way it works. So that's exactly why you should question your religion. What you don't know. That is exactly the reason why you should. Because if something doesn't make sense, you should go back and say, do I have a good reason for believing what I believe? That is exactly the reason to go back and question it. But he's saying, well, don't let anything that we don't know let you question the conclusion that you've already reached. Isn't that like one of the reasons why you would? Doesn't it make sense to? Right? If you come to the conclusion that your son isn't taking your car at night, if you don't know where your car is and you don't know where your son is, isn't that a reason to like challenge that belief? Of course it is. Of course. And I'm not saying you have to declare that you don't believe it anymore just out of hand, but you're basically saying don't even question it when you have a question that you can't answer. You should, right? This is really weird. It's kind of this, oh, look, if we run into trouble, don't start questioning your beliefs. I question my beliefs all the time, constantly. And if there's something I don't know, of course like if I have a belief, say that the universe, just say the Big Bang was the origin of the universe, or that, hey, Sean Carroll's child parent universe is the one that's correct, right? And I believe that sincerely. If I don't know how it happened, and if I don't know, if Sean Carroll doesn't know how to show it, I would absolutely be challenging that belief. Jay Dyer, the most arrogant precept. Well, that's a bold statement, Donald Mack. I've met some, I kind of think that Darth Dawkins is probably the worst one I've interacted with as far as arrogance is concerned. That was an unholy level of arrogance that is incredible.
We do know the universe had a beginning, so it must.
No, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't.
There must be a beginner. We do know the universe is fine-tuned, so there must be.
Okay, so number one, we don't know that the universe had a beginning, right? We don't know. No physicist out there will say we know that the universe had a beginning. They will say that the Big Bang is the beginning of the inflationary period of the universe, right? Like we know that, and we presume based upon that, we assume in a way that, hey, if it's constantly contracting into a smaller point, that the presumed origin would be that smallest point, but we've got a problem there that the physics breaks down. So nobody in science is claiming that the singularity that we think was there was definitely the beginning. We don't know that at all, right? It is hypothesized, sure, absolutely hypothesized. The Vilenkin, the Guth, what is it? Guth, I can't remember the name of it. The Born-Guth-Vilenkin theorem. That has been claimed by Christians and other theists to be, oh yes, they've shown that the universe had a big. No, they didn't. They just showed that there was an inflationary period and the Big Bang was the beginning of that inflationary period. That's all. That's it. And I think it was Guth himself that said that. So argue with the man that wrote the paper. So yeah, we don't know the universe had a beginning. Probably, but we don't know. Nobody can see back that far. We're sort of constrained by our physics, and at 1 Planck second after the presumed beginning, our physics breaks down. Time, space don't seem to be relevant anymore. If time started at that singularity, what does before that singularity mean? Nothing. Him saying we know it's fine-tuned, no one's saying that either. Like, there's an appearance of fine-tuning, but we don't know that for sure. Like, because through evolution, things look designed, but we know they're not. Things aren't designed. In evolution, we adapt to our environment, making it look designed, but it's not designed. It's just that anything that doesn't adapt dies out, so whatever's left is adapted to its environment. That's it. I don't know if the universe is fine-tuned. There are constants that seem like if they were something else, then we'd not have a universe. But there actually is propositions about a universe that could be more stable, that could be actually better tuned. So does that mean that it's not? It's unclear. And nobody's saying that it is or it isn't because they don't know. So you don't know that, Frank Turek.
Fine tuner. We do know there's objective right and wrong, objective moral standard. So there must be a moral lawgiver.
Do we? I don't think there is. Objective right and wrong? I don't think there is. I've never been shown it. This is the thing. Like, you're sort of saying, hey, we're going to presuppose all of these things and then say, well, that means there's a lawgiver, which is a dumb argument, right? It's a stupid argument. Because, moral values are not like human-created laws. And plus, laws are subjective, right? There's nothing objective about our laws outside of human subjectivity. There's nothing saying that you can't do these things in law. You just, it doesn't mean they're not important.
We do know there's very good evidence that Jesus predicted and accomplished his resurrection from the dead. We know all those things.
Yeah, I don't think there's good evidence for that. I really don't think there's good evidence for that. There's a story. A lot of people believe it. That doesn't make good evidence, sir. That's bad evidence. And I think that Turek is a pre-supper, so I'm not sure why he's going to this evidentialist kind of stuff. I think he kind of mixes and matches depending on who he's talking to. But Kirk Cameron's a pre-supper, as far as I know. He would just be going to, hey, we know God exists because we presuppose that God is responsible for intelligibility or morality or something like that. And call it a day. Job done.
Beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond all doubt. So if we have questions outside of those...
Beyond a reasonable doubt, no, I don't think you would. I don't think that would hold up in court, sir. I don't think, a reasonable doubt would be, hey, they could have made it up. Yeah, that's a reasonable doubt. Wow. Okay. I'm amazed to see him say, well, beyond reasonable doubt, but we don't know for sure. Usually they'll be on board with, oh, they absolutely know Jesus rose from the dead. So I'm actually fascinated.
Things. That doesn't somehow negate the things we do know. It just means we haven't thought through these questions enough to figure out what the answer is yet. That's okay. We're finite creatures. We're not going to know everything.
That's right. That's right. We just need to watch a few more Frank Turek videos and Greg Koukl videos.
Yeah, and this is the problem. This is the real problem, because he's basically saying, hey, we don't know how these things happen, but we have our conclusion. We've got to find how to get from that, the evidence that we see around us, to the conclusion that we want. And this is dangerous because humans do confirmation bias. We always do this. Everybody does it. It's kind of a human failing. It just is. What we want to do is look at the evidence and follow it to where it leads. But that's not what these guys are doing. They have the conclusion first, and now they're trying to get to that conclusion with the evidence, which is a terrible way to find out what is true and what is not true.
so grateful for apologetics books. I never felt like apologetics. I was always waiting for guys like you to come out with the silver bullet that would just end all arguments. Like, you guys are so smart. Why don't you guys all get together, figure out all the questions, answer them, and let's be done with this and just move on.
The problem is there is no silver bullet, because most often, I found anyway, that disbelief is not a matter of the mind, it's a matter of the heart.
Okay, there are two things there. Number one, there's no silver bullet. If God wants you to believe that he exists, right? God, that is an aim of an omnipotent being. He is an all-powerful being that wants you to believe. Why wouldn't he give you a silver bullet, right? It's kind of this whole thing of God wants something. He wants everybody to believe in him and worship and love him ostensibly, but, you know, let's put that aside. But he wants everyone to believe first and foremost. But he's not giving you the silver bullet in which to do so. Why? That's one of these questions that we don't have an answer for. If God's all-powerful and God could give you a silver bullet that would end all arguments, but instead he gives you crappy apologetics, why? Why is he limited or unable or unwilling to do so? No idea.
And that's why I always ask young people.
Oh, the second thing, it's not a part of your head, it's a matter of your heart. No, my heart pumps blood around my body, okay? That's what it does. And we tie things that are emotional to our heart, like emotional reasoning kind of thing. Like, oh, I feel a certain way because I feel it in my heart. Now, how we understand that today, because don't forget, in the times of Jesus, the times of ancient Judea, they had a cardiocentric view, that the heart was the source of all thinking, right? That's what they believed. Because when you thought something significant, you felt it in your heart. We now know that it happens in your brain. My heart pumps blood around my body. Now, that's not to say there isn't a feedback process. You know, like if your heart's pumping and stuff and you feel it, you can be affected by it. Sure, yes, whatever. But we know that emotions and thoughts happen in your brain. We're aware of this. So it's not a problem in your heart. It's a problem in your brain, in your head, as he says. But what he's trying to do is say, stop thinking critically, stop thinking intellectually, think emotionally. And this is something that I've been pointing out recently, that a lot of apologists will say, well, I want to get them to an emotional reasoning state. And Ray Comfort, in my last week, I pointed this out. He said, I want to switch from intellectual to emotional. And it's like, yeah, you're being dodgy. You're being horrible, because when you do that, people make decisions that aren't the best. You're basically preying on people's emotive reasoning, and that is not a good thing. Like when you convince somebody of something logically and intellectually, that's one thing. But when you're sitting there emotionally manipulating them, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's awful. Like, and they just, I mean, mask off, give the game away. I want to emotionally manipulate people. Think with your heart, not with your head. No, that's not a good way to sort out what is true from what is not true. But they do it all the time. These people do it all the time. They prey on their followers' emotional vulnerabilities. And that's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
And old people at the microphone, I asked them, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And Kirk, 99 times out of 10, they'll say no. In front of hundreds of people, they'll say no.
I believe it, and I've seen it.
Yeah. And I'll say, wait a minute, you claim to be an atheist. You claim to be a beacon of reason. How is it that you wouldn't believe something that was true if you claim to be reasonable?
Okay, so here's a conflation, right? So Frank Turek is talking about, he's asking people whether they would become a Christian if they had absolute proof that God was real, right? So he's making a conflation here with, would you believe that a God exists, with would you worship and follow a God? So we have to break this down. And what I would be saying is, well, what do you define as a Christian? If you define a Christian as just someone that believes in a God, then yeah, I'd become a Christian. I would be a Christian, right? Because I would believe in the thing that has been proven to me. But if you're asking, would I worship that God? The question is, well, that depends on the God, doesn't it? It depends if they're a nice person or they had our best intentions, or whether they were like the God of the Old Testament who's a horrible, nasty monster. There's so much to that, but he's just sort of saying, hey, you can tell an atheist if you had proof, would you become a Christian? And they say, no. How could this be? What if the God that you're worshipping is a complete prick? Like, I wouldn't follow and worship that God. That's the provision. Like, it has to be a God worth following. If it was real, like in this hypothesis, if you showed me that the God is real, okay, I would believe it exists. But that is a far cry from becoming an adherent to its particular religious system, which is what a Christian is. They are a person that follows Christ, right? A person that believes in, worships, and tries to live their life in, in the way that the persona of Jesus Christ did. So when they're saying, no, I wouldn't become a Christian just because I believe that a God exists, you have to take into account that I'm not following a God that doesn't deserve following, right? Even if I do believe a God exists. So, and he's like, oh, how could this be? Well, if the God's not worth following, like, would you follow, like Tiamat, the god of ancient Mesopotamia, which was responsible for all of the death, decay, and horrible stuff that happened? That was a god. Wouldn't follow that god. Don't like it. Like, that's the thing. It's wild.
Because it's not a matter of reason. It's not a head problem. It's a heart problem. They don't want it to be true. They don't want there to be a God because they want to be God over their own lives. They're not on a truth quest or on a happiness quest.
No. It's the reason why I've just given. It's not a head problem. It's a heart problem. No. Because if it was a heart problem and I was only interested in myself, if I knew a God exists, then I would get eternal rewards from it. If it was just about what's good for me, I would go stuff everybody else down there and being tortured in hell. I'm going to go for what's good for me. No, it's not that. It's not. This is, yeah, no, I get you. Yeah, 99% of the time. Yeah, pulled it out of his ass. But yeah, even if that's true, it still may not be what he thinks it is. It may not be that they just go, well, if I knew a God exists, depends on the God. It depends on the God, right? It's not a heart problem or a head problem. And I hate the way that they use this. Oh, it's a problem with my heart pumped blood around my body. That's about it. It's not deciding anything. Stop using this. But no, we're not emotionally reasoning. We're not saying, oh, but if the God exists, I could get to heaven, that would feel really good. No, that's not what we're doing. We're saying, hey, if that God is doing horrible crap to people, I don't want to follow him. That is a head decision. It's Turek here that's sort of just conflating things. And quite frankly, I think he's emotionally reasoning. He's going, oh, it'd be so great to, have this truth and this light and stuff. Yeah, is that selfish? Probably. Because you don't seem to care about people in hell.
And ladies and gentlemen, can we be honest? Sometimes we're on a happiness quest too. We're not on a truth quest. We just want to believe what we want to believe.
That I think is true. I think that a lot of Christians do what I call wishful thinking. They just go, well, I want it to be true. But guess what? What you want has no bearing on what is true and what is not. I am painfully aware of that, as I want to be certain things and am not. When I was first diagnosed with autism, right? I was diagnosed with autism and I was upset. I was unhappy. I was like, I don't want to be this way. I sort of thought, well, it's something that you can't cure. There's no cure for it. There's no changing it. There's no amount of, say, reading self-help books. There's no amount of therapy that can cure it. It is just something you are. I was upset, right? I didn't want to be neurodivergent. I didn't want to be thinking differently than the majority of people out there. I just wanted to be an ordinary person, but I'm not. And it sucks at times. Like, it really sucks. But we've got to come to terms with life, and reality isn't what we want. It isn't what we want it to be. We have to deal with the reality in front of us. And I think a lot of Christians don't do that. And pointed out by, Turek himself, when he sort of says, well, if morality isn't objective, people can just do whatever they want. Yeah, that's what they're doing. That's 100% what they're doing. I don't see any God objectively stopping Israel from doing these horrible things to the Palestinians. I don't see, them stopping World War II. I don't see anything that would suggest that morality is objectively true. And I wish there was. I wish there was an objectively true morality that we can say this is true, right? This is right and this is wrong, and, there's no argument about it. It's just, that's what it is. I would like that. I wish that were the case. But nothing leads me to believe that. And I have to deal with what is true, not what I want to be true. How old was I? I think 41, I think. I was diagnosed very late, Archer. I was diagnosed incredibly late. Okay? Incredibly late. And I had problems throughout my life. Definitely had problems. I had problems holding down jobs. I had problems socially interacting with others. I had a whole load of problems. And my mentality was kind of like, well, I'll just work on this and, I'll work it out. And, I can be like everybody else if I just do. No, I will never be just neurotypical. I will never be. And that is just reality. I'm sorry. That's reality. Bites you in the ass. It sucks, sure. But we have to learn to deal with what is and not what we want to be. And don't get me wrong, it's good to hope for things. It's good to work towards things. It's good to say, hey, I wish the world were like this. But, there's only very small amounts that we can control ourselves. And we've got to say, hey, if I was born with a brain that neurologically is wired for a certain way, that is the way that my brain is. There's nothing I can do about it. And accept that. We have to accept it. It's interesting in the debate against Wilson, when I pointed out like psychopathy and what it entailed kind of thing, and said people have no sense of empathy. One of the things that got me, he said, you realize there's no cure for that. And I'm like, yeah. What does that matter? Like, whether or not it is a thing. Yeah, and look, psychopaths are in a similar boat to me. Their brains will never work like a neurotypical person's. They just won't. Because of the way that them sort of, have had their trauma and genetics, that it creates a lack of empathy. They will never be cured. We manage it because it can't be. Trans people, their brains are wired for the wrong gender, the gender that does not fit their sex. That is how their brains have developed, and we can't cure that. It is just what it is. But instead of going, hey, I want it to just be male and female and there is no gender and stuff. No, we can't change that. We have to deal with things as they are.
To make us happy. So I always ask them, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And I recommend people out there that you ought to ask that same question and see if people are honest. If they're going to tell you the truth.
Which is funny, because he's not telling the truth, because I have seen this time and time again. If Christianity is true, would you become a Christian? And the atheist will usually say, it depends on what the Christ actually is. It depends, right? It depends on whether they're doing good things or not. It depends on the God. Because if you have Jesus that's a God and the Father's also the God, if the God wants to destroy everybody, I can't get on board with that. I can't. If your God wants to torture people for eternity, I can't be on board with that.
They believe if Christianity is true, and too often
Yeah, that's true. That's true, Jedi. I do want to iterate that, yes. And these people, they're not wrong or a mistake, right? Like, even psychopaths, they're not wrong or a mistake. There's nothing bad about them inherently, right? That you've got to understand that they can be really productive, really good members of society. We just have to understand how they work and what they're going through. Me being autistic, it's nothing wrong, not a mistake. People being trans, nothing wrong, not a mistake. It's just the way our brains have developed. Yeah, I got you, Donald, and I'm sorry to hear that, mate. Yeah, so there's a few in the DSM categorized under neurodiversity. There is autistic, developmental learning disorder. There's another couple. I think one is ADHD, and there's another one that I can't remember. But yeah, that's definitely one. Like, that's definitely one. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. It's not a mistake. It is, you know, I see you, I accept you. That's, you know, we all, we have different things that happen. And, you know, but things like that, I wish that I wasn't, right? But that isn't the reality I have to deal with. I have to deal with that I am neurodivergent in both ASD, Tourette's. Thank you, Deviant. Thank you very much. Yep, Tourette's. Autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. That is the things that I am. My brain is wired for. And you know, I wish it were otherwise. I do. I really wish it were otherwise. But we can't just base what we believe on what we wish to be true. And I see so much of that from the Christian world. You know, don't you want there to be a heaven? Sure. But I don't base what I believe on what I want.
The answer is no. So what do you do with people like that? You pray for them. You love them, which means you don't approve of everything they do. You seek what's best for them. You drop seeds or plant seeds every now and then you wait, Kirk. You wait, because sometimes people are only going to come to faith or be interested when something happens in their life that causes them to wake up, like when tragedy happens, right?
Okay, so he's talking about planting seeds in people so you can capitalize on it when tragedy strikes. So, and I remember why I pulled this clip, because he's saying something that is absolutely horrific, right? He's absolutely horrific. Now, me as an atheist, when tragedy strikes, that is no time to try and deconvert somebody. Okay, it's not right. If you are using somebody's emotional state to try and deconvert them, stop. If somebody has lost a loved one, stop. If you're trying to deconvert them, no, that's really wrong. You are preying on their emotional vulnerability. That is not cool, right? But listen to what he just said. Like, you plant seeds and then wait for a time when they've just had a tragedy. They've just had something bad happen. Capitalize on that tragedy. What are you doing? You are basically outlining emotional manipulation. And this is why Turek is such a dangerous, horrible guy. He has just outlined, yep, wait for tragedy and then convert them.
I mean, sometimes you only look up when you're on your back. And when that happens, if you stayed in that person's life long enough, your phone's going to ring and that person's going to be on the other end.
Well, as an atheist, I would say support that person, no matter who they are or what they're going through. And if they're a religious person, let them have that. Like, or let them have whatever. Just provide support. Be there for them. It doesn't, you don't have to get a conversion out of it, Turek. Like, that they don't realize just how malignant and horrible this is insane, right? you're talking about, oh, well, there's a young woman, she's lost her mother, she's grieving, and you want to convert her at that point. You fucker. Like, seriously, this is horrible. Like, this is awful. This is emotional manipulation to convert people to your religion. If you're doing this as a Christian, stop. Stop. Help people, build them up, and get through the horrible times they're having. Then have your conversation and try and convert them. What kind of God needs emotional vulnerability in order to convert them? Right? What kind of God needs that? What kind of God? And this is why, if your God's good, okay, I may be a Christian. If your God's horrible, what kind of God is doing this? It's ridiculous. And, I agree. And Probing Time's got a good point that I didn't think of. If it was proven true, I'd have no option. Yeah, and that shouldn't rely on people being in a vulnerable state. You should be able to convince me at my best. You should be able to convince me when I am, just asking for evidence of a God and completely, secure and happy in my life. Why do you need people vulnerable in order to convince them, Frank Turek? Why? Because it doesn't work otherwise. What the fuck? Like, seriously, this guy, he's actually pissing me off right now. I'm sorry.
They're not going to call their atheist friend when tragedy strikes. What's their atheist friend going to say?
What? Oh, no, I never talk to my atheist friends when tragedy strikes. I've never had a bad day and a really shitty time or, been through something. I've never called my atheist friends because they just don't care. Bullshit. Bullcrap. What are you talking about? Absolutely we care. Wow. The amount of crap that flows out of this guy's face, like, seriously. Do you think if you came to me and said, hey, I just lost somebody, I would be like, oh yeah, I don't care. It doesn't affect my life. Of course I care. Holy crap. And then they want to say, oh, I don't understand why they're protesting what's happening in Palestine. You accuse us of being uncaring, and then you don't understand why we're object to children dying in Palestine. It's ridiculous. Like, seriously.
Well, stuff just happens. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Get over it. No, they're going to call you a person of spiritual depth. When the student is ready, he or she will summon the teacher, but not before. So just wait. Just pray and wait. I mean, you haven't always been a Christian. I haven't always been a Christian. Why do we expect everybody to believe what we believe right now? We shouldn't.
Yeah, I find myself, look, I do agree with him here. Why do you expect everyone to agree with you? I don't understand. Christians are like this. Oh, we're in a country of, mostly Christians. We expect everyone to be Christian. Why? And this is the thing, like, you think that there's going to be an eternal judge who's going to sort everything out, like give everybody their just desserts, but you get angry when they don't believe you. If you knew that was right, you would absolutely just go, well, you choose yourself. But they don't. It's because people doubting make them doubt. Or when I say make them doubt, they don't make them doubt per se, but they start to doubt when people don't believe and bring up perfectly reasonable questions. So they get angry.
Yeah. People are on a trajectory, either moving toward Jesus or away. Everybody is.
Frank, when you travel the country and you're talking to young people on college campuses, what are you being asked most right now?
Well, now the three top objections to Christianity are morality, morality, and morality.
What do you mean?
Well, it's all about LGBTQ issues. It's all about why did God kill the Canaanites? What about slavery in the Bible?
Yeah, so it's not only the problem of evil, it's also why is God so evil in the Bible? And why are we making people suffer because of your belief in a religion? So Of course, like, so this is what gives me heart. Young people, they look at suffering of LGBTQI people suffering and go, I don't like that. That's a friend. That's a loved one. That's a person. That's a human. They use empathy, which we all have for the most part, except for, as aforementioned, psychopaths. But, we use empathy and we go, hey, I don't like that. That could be me. Yeah. And guess what? We know from our studies of it that gay people didn't choose to be gay and trans people didn't choose to be trans. They were just that way from birth. They were born that way, just as I was born with ADHD and ASD. That I didn't choose that. It isn't a choice. If people were like saying, hey, it's a sin to be have attention deficit, I'd be like, what the fuck, man? And it's important to understand what the DSM is and what it says psychologically speaking. It only categorizes disorders when it's harmful enough to affect your life, right? When basically my life is in disorder because of a certain way that my brain works. That's how they classify it. So people can be autistic without having autism spectrum disorder. And people can be trans without having gender dysphoria, right? It's really important to understand that we have to accept these people as they are because they didn't choose it. That's just how they are. That's what all of the studies have told us. It's not something that they choose to do or are convinced or swayed by anybody. No one can sway you or convince you to change your gender. It just doesn't fucking happen. It is something that comes from the brain. And we have neurologists talking about it. Dr. Chris did a fantastic debate on it with Amy Newman. Absolutely magnificent. That is just the way they are, just as I am the way I am. And I don't get to choose it. So when I look at some poor trans person being harassed for simply daring to be born with a certain type of brain, I go, well, that could be me. That easily could be me. If it was autistic people instead of, and look, just for your information, there is kind of a push to attack autistic people. There is a organization in America called Autism Speaks. Do not give them a fucking dime. They want to get rid of autistic people and, bring up Robert Kennedy and his dumbass frigging vaccines cause autism. Come on, get out of here. Like, seriously, that's been so debunked, it's ridiculous. So there is kind of a little bit of a push to get rid of us. I didn't choose this. So understand that trans people didn't choose it either. That is how they are. And we have good science to show that. So just because you believe because of your religion that, oh, it's a sin because my religion said, no one cares, all right? No one cares that your religion has designated it X, Y, or Z. Doesn't matter, all right? It is irrelevant. The question that should be asked is, well, if your God wants it to be a sin, why did he put a female brain in a male body? Is a good question. Right? Why did he put a gay brain in them? Because these are problems of neurology and chemistry and all of these things that make our brains operate. It's not one of theology. It just isn't. Okay? And you can have your theology, but why do you have to make these poor people suffer because you don't understand the science? It's beyond me.
Is the God of the Old Testament evil? What about there being only one way to Jesus? These are all moral questions. And that's what people struggle with because they think they have a moral standard that God needs to adhere to.
Well, they're using moral intuition, and moral intuition is kind of like our culture raises us a certain way. We have certain influences. We kind of have feelings that guide us in a direction, like empathy, for instance, and reciprocity, right? So empathy is being able to feel how someone else is feeling in order to understand what they're feeling. And this is all very scientifically documented. Absolutely documented that we have mirror neurons, that when you see somebody upset, it fires the same ones, right? It fires the same neurons to allow you to feel upset. And it's like contagious laughter. That sense of empathy guides us along our way. And so the whole idea that we have this sense of empathy, but God doesn't want you to use it. He wants you to, call that person a sinner and ostracize them from society. Why give you a sense of empathy if he doesn't want you to use it? Why? I don't understand it. Reciprocity is the other one. It's the idea of, people being equal and getting equal things for equal work or equal treatment, basically. We have that sense as well, a sense of injustice. Why give us that sense if we're not supposed to use it? So why do we have it? And it's that thing of, well, God made me to be good. This feels really horrible to do this to people, but God wants me to do it, who gave me the sense to feel that it's horrible in the first place. It's that cognitive dissonance. Those things don't sit well together. God is good and also wiped out all of the Canaanites in various tribes, kind of thing. God is good and tortures people eternity in hell. That is the cognitive dissonance. So it's not surprising why young people are going, yeah, but this sucks. That's my friend. And they just happen to be trans, which the science says isn't really up to them. And you want me to be awful to them because God says. There's a cognitive dissonance there because they know it's not good, but, God says.
And so I always ask them, what's your moral standard? Where are you getting this moral standard from?
And what do they say?
Well, they kind of fumble around because they'll just say, well, everybody knows this to be true. Well, I'm not asking you how you know it. I'm asking.
Yeah, look, I don't agree with the idea of objective morality from evolution, because I don't think that empathy and reciprocity necessarily make a code of conduct. It doesn't rise to the level of morality. We still have to take stances on that. But you can use those emotions, those tools as a guide for what is good for people and what is bad for people, because I can tell what will damage a person. I know that if somebody is an utter mess on the floor crying, that they're not well, right? So if I want well-being to be the thing, if that person's on the ground crying their eyes out, I know that that's not well for them. I don't have to do a study to know that. We can use these as guides, as senses, like a sense of empathy, a sense of reciprocity. We can use these to guide us and then make moral systems from there. That's what we can do. And that is what we do. Do? Okay, yeah, Mark said something. Sorry, just one sec. Yep.
What is the grounding for this standard that you're saying everybody needs to adhere to?
And I would imagine from the
So most moral standards don't have an everybody needs to adhere to it. Like usually we're searching for what I call moral compatibility, that we say, hey, you're entitled to your beliefs. You may think that this isn't a problem. You may think that is a problem. But really we're just looking for common ground in which we can base society. So it's not having an ultimate foundation. It's having enough in common and giving people the leeway to make their own moral decisions in order to create the best society that we can for everybody. It isn't about saying, well, not going to church is sinful, so that's something you have to do. Yeah, but if somebody doesn't, I don't care. That's the thing. I may think it's moral to be a vegan, right? Like maybe that's the case. I mean, just for the record, personally, I think it's a moral virtue, but I don't think it's a moral necessity. Like I think that maybe you're a better person if you don't, but hey, I don't care if I do. It's not something that's morally sort of, you know, something that I morally believe is necessary. So, you know, we have these trade-offs, and we say, hey, you can be a vegan and you can have this morality. I don't believe the same thing, but we can still coexist in a society. You don't eat meat, I do. Okay, that's fine. I don't have to push my morality of, hey, meat's good for you onto the vegan, and the vegan doesn't have to push it onto me. Really, all we've got to do is set a bedrock of moral necessities and then work out a functioning society from there. Oh, look, I have to be in the mood. I got to admit, like whether I'm a fan of crying or not, I understand the importance of it in dealing with certain emotions. Like I look, I blubbered. Like there's a couple of songs that I listen to. Look, what is it? If you are a guy and you can watch what is it? It's called Monsters by James Blunt. If you can watch Monsters by James Blunt without crying, I think that I could not get through that song. I could not get through it. That song is, oh boy. That's a rough song to get through if you've ever lost your father. Wow. I blubbered like a child. I will be honest with you. You know, it really is just that kind of song. Oh boy. Yeah. But, you know, there's times where I feel like letting it out. I feel sad. I feel really sad and I want to cry. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I put on sad music just to let it out. Yeah, I do. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Sometimes I feel really sad and I let it out, and then I pick myself up and I keep going. Yeah. And, you know, being vulnerable is hard. Being vulnerable is really hard. There's a lot of people out to hurt you. I get it. It's hard. You have to be strong to be vulnerable. So think about that. There's another quote from Mark Reed. What are my two quotes that I did so far? First one was, Presup is the Steven Seagal of apologetics. And the next one is, you've got to be strong to be vulnerable. There you go.
People I've talked to say, well, my standard is love. My standard is compassion, is kindness.
Who said why? Why should you love somebody?
Well, because it's the right thing to do.
That's the circle, though. You'd ask them, right. Why is it the right thing to do? What is the standard of rightness that we're obligated to obey if there is no God?
Why do we care for people? Why do we care for people? Why do we experience this social bond between people? Why do we care? Well, it's because we care for others, so they will care for us. It's because we are a social creature. We are a social organism. We are a social animal, right? You know, we care for others so they will care for us. That's how a society works. We care for the people around us and they care for us. That's entirely how a society works. If we just go, well, you know, I don't give a crap about the other people in my society. They can do whatever. I'm going to hurt them. I'm going to do whatever. They won't care about you. And the way that social society works, if you violate that social contract, they'll kick you out. Whether that's prison or exile or whatever the society does to stop you from being a dick, they will make it happen. This has happened all throughout history. It is the way that social groups deal with people that do not care about those around them. And so as a consequence, we've evolved to care. We do. because that's the only way we survive, is if we care about others and they care about us. Look, and this has been going on forever. They found like I think a Australopithecus or a Homo habilis, one of the really early humans who had broken a limb and it had healed, right? Had broken a leg and it had healed, which said that they were being taken care of. They were being given food. They were being given water. Someone was caring for them. It's what we do. It's how we operate. It's how we succeed. It's how we thrive. It's how humans do everything, right?
And if there's no purpose to life, there's no right way to live it, right? Just like if there's no purpose to a football.
Well, there's no, like when you say no purpose, I think the intrinsic purpose, so what's he saying is intrinsic purpose, because our lives have purpose, but we create them. We say, hey, this is what I want to do in my life. So, you know, to say there's no purpose for life, well, it depends. It depends on how you're using purpose, but also the purpose for life is to survive and multiply. That's about it. But that doesn't mean that has to be the purpose for your specific life, right? It doesn't have to be what your purpose is. Your purpose can be all kinds of things, but, you know, if there's no purpose, there's no, what are you talking about? Look, you can make an argument to evolution as being a moral foundation. You can say, hey, we have to survive, and the only way to do that is sort of, you know, social cohesion, right? Because with no social cohesion, we don't have any social systems. I personally think that just empathy, reciprocity, and a drive for social cohesion doesn't make a morality, right? I think you still have to choose that surviving is important, so it is stance dependent. But you can argue that surviving, social cohesion, and therefore all of these other things follow on to be moral, to be good to people, to help people, is objectively moral based upon that objective or claimed objective push to survival and thriving and flourishing as a human, right? You can make that argument. I don't think so, but because I don't think it's objective. I think even if our stance is getting a push by evolutionary drives and evolutionary or biological drives, I still think it is stance dependent, even if that stance is partly based upon something objective. But you can make that argument, and people have. So, you know, to say, well, they've got no answer. No, they do. It's just he asks young students who may not be able to articulate it, or may not, you know, have listened to a whole bunch of secular morality stuff.
There's no way to say that throwing a touchdown is better than throwing an interception. If there's no purpose to the game, right? The plays are just different. And if there's...
Yeah, but if we can agree on a purpose, if we can agree that, hey, a touchdown is good, like we can say, hey, human well-being is good, then suddenly that all makes sense. A touchdown is way better than fumbling the ball or whatever it is, or giving it to the other side, right? As long as we can agree. And that's all we've got to do is say, hey, in this society, the well-being of the members of society is good. And then, bam, we've got an entire moral system. That's all we need. So he's sort of proving himself wrong here with his analogy. Yeah, compare it to grid. There's nothing to say whether putting the touchdown, except if we all agree that it's good. Because let me give you the tip, Frank Turek. There is nothing objectively good about scoring a touchdown. We made it up. We just said, hey, we like it when this team wins the game. Here are the rules of the game. Here's what we consider to be good in the game. Have at it. And suddenly things become good and bad. He's basically showing meta-ethical relativity or meta-ethical reasoning or morality with his example, which is wild.
No purpose to life, there's no right way to live it and no wrong way to live it. So the only objective purpose to life can come from the creator. If there's no creator, it's just your opinion against somebody else's.
No, you can give your life purpose. And that doesn't mean we're worshipping or consider yourself a god. It just means that you can choose that, hey, I would like to live. And it may be based upon just emotional reasons. Hey, I want to live in a society where people are well because I want to be well. And I like a society that is functioning well, has representation of people, has people happy and well. You know, it's a nice place to live. It's sort of saying, well, you know, if you can't agree that you don't want to live in a shithole, then you've got no basis for wanting your house clean. Of course you do. You don't want to live in a shithole.
You know
what? I'm swearing a lot today. I'm sorry. Look, I did a front thing on this. If you're coming late, that's totally cool. Like, I totally understand. I've dropped in before. I did a front thing on the protests against Palestine. I'm kind of really mad about what's happening over there. So I think I'm swearing more than usual. Look, I'm being a bit Australian. I got to be honest. I've been a bit Australian. I haven't dropped the C-bomb yet, but you know, early days.
These are the kinds of tools that not only help Christians dismantle bad thinking and worldviews and then tee up the gospel, but it also helps us to have confidence in our own faith. I know that's what apologetics primarily did for me.
Yes, agree. Yeah.
It helped.
Yeah, and that's what apologetics is designed for. It's not necessarily. So Jessica, I don't think she's here today, but Jessica had a really good point that I saw on another stream, and Jessica's a really prominent member of the channel. She's awesome. She sort of said, the primary function of apologetics is to reinforce belief, not to convert others. And I totally agree with that. I think that there is a secondary, I think that there is a secondary goal of converting others. Don't get me wrong. I think that's definitely a thing. But I think the primary purpose of apologetics is to reinforce the Christian's belief. I really do believe that. A lot of the arguments, they sound very hollow to people that don't already believe in the God or the Bible or something already. And I think there's a reason for that. I think it is because it is trying to justify a belief that already exists rather than trying to justify someone who doesn't believe to believe. You know, and I think that was really well said.
Being dragged the skeletons out of my own closet, those questions that I was afraid might be true. And the fact that no one came up with an airtight, bulletproof answer to every single question really, it bothered me. And so apologetics helped me to shrink that down to only a few. And so it's so valuable. And one of those tools is to understand the standard of morality that we're working with. What's the evidence that Christianity?
Well, what's the evidence that your morality is in fact objective? Because I sort of had this argument with somebody that dropped in and they sort of said, well, your morality has, they were calling it arbitrary. And so every time someone says arbitrary, I usually they don't know what it means. Arbitrary means for no reason whatsoever. Right, I have my reasons for the morality that I take. You know, the reason might be, well, secular humanism, it's because I'm human, so I care about other humans, right? Just for the virtue that I am human. And, you know, they can't say, well, that's arbitrary. Well, it's not. That is a reason to care about your own species, but it's not arbitrary. Arbitrary means completely random. Like if I go, well, I'm going to point out something on my desk, it's a red pen, right? That's arbitrary. There's no reason for it. It's completely, there's no principle or reason as to why you're choosing something. That is arbitrary. When you have reasons, then it may be subjective, right? It's like saying, well, I'm going to have chocolate ice cream. And they say, why? Well, I like chocolate ice cream. It tastes good to me. And them saying, well, that's arbitrary. No, it's not arbitrary. It's subjective, right? Subjectively, I like, it tastes good to me that chocolate is good. That is a subjective thing. But it's not arbitrary. There is a reason for your choice, right? As opposed to some other choice. So I'm sick of them using the word arbitrary wrong. Because they always do. They always say, oh, well, if your morality is subjective, it's just arbitrary. No, those two things are not equal. There is reasons for why we have chosen the morality the way that we have. And it may be subjective, but it's not arbitrary. There are reasons. So I hate this idea of that. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I kind of had a rant earlier and got it out. Objective ethics. So yeah, I kind of am a bit stroppy though over it. I was pointing out that 300,000 people in Sydney, Australia, turned out for the protest of what's happening in Palestine, which out of a city of 5 million, that is incredible. And it was a rainy day. And I just have to check what day it was. Oh, it was a Sunday. It was a Sunday. So yeah, I thought it might be a weekday, but yeah, that's really good. And like the courts decided they could do it, but if the courts decided against it, they would have done it anyway. I wonder how many police officers does Sydney have? Yeah, so 300,000 there, and apparently Sydney at full strength only has about 16,000 police officers. So you could imagine how that would go down, quite frankly.
Is the most reasonable worldview?
You only have to answer two questions. Does God exist? And did Jesus rise from the dead? Because if those two things are true, Christianity is true. If either one of those things is false, Christianity is false. So when we present on a college campus using our book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, we spend a lot of time on those two questions.
Yeah, buy my DVDs. Yeah, look, he shills his book. I've said what I think about this faith to be an atheist. He's using a really weird definition of faith, or he doesn't understand the atheist position, one of the two.
Does God exist, and did Jesus rise from the dead? The first question, does God exist? We go through three arguments, Kirk, and obviously we can't spend a lot of time here going through them, but let's mention the first one, and that's called the cosmological argument, which says that everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. Now, even atheists are admitting the universe had a beginning.
No. We don't know if it had a beginning. And this is what I touched on earlier, that Frank will say, hey, we know it had a beginning. No, not even the best physicists are saying that we know it had a beginning. We presume it had a beginning. We kind of make that assumption based upon the expansion of the universe, but all we can do is say, hey, there was a singularity. What was before that? What was before time? It doesn't make any sense. We don't know. It could have. I'm not saying it doesn't, but we don't know that.
Stephen Hawking, probably the top physicist in the world until he died about 6 years ago, said, almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning.
I don't think he said universe. I think he said time and space had a beginning. Yeah, so he had proposed the universe had no moment of creation. So Stephen Hawking's, and this is just the AI thing, so take this with a grain of salt. His views on whether the universe had evolved over time, he proposed that the universe had no moment of creation. Later, he suggested the universe did have a beginning, expanding from a central point of origin, but that's a suggestion. It's not, we've got to, like, just because they make a hypothesis doesn't mean they're saying it definitely did, right? He kind of moved back and forth on whether it had a beginning and whether it didn't. So at different times in his life, he did, said different things. But it's not like he's written a paper saying that it did, right? Like, he's not saying, hey, I know. He's saying, well, I think it did. And then he said he think it doesn't. And then he said he think it did. But he definitely said it had no moment of creation at one point. So, he didn't claim to know, Frank. He just suggested that it could have. That's all. He didn't claim to know. So I don't know why he's sort of doing this appeal to authority, saying, oh, Stephen Hawking suggested at one point it could have had a big... Yeah, he did, but he didn't say for sure.
The Big Bang. Now, I know Christians worry, what, do you believe in the Big Bang? Yes, I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. All right.
Right.
So space.
Wait, is Frank Turek an old Earth creationist and Kirk Cameron's a young Earth creationist? How awkward. I know that Kirk Cameron's a young Earth creationist. I'm sure he believes in flood and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure he is. Doesn't he hang around with Ray Comfort? Isn't he a young Earth creationist? Yeah, Kirk Cameron is a young Earth creationist. Okay. So Frank Turek accepts cosmogony? Okay.
Time and matter literally came into existence out of nothing. And the second argument is kind of,
well, no, not out of nothing. It was what they called nothing. So no space, no time, no matter, no energy. But what they're saying, it was quantum field states, like quantum plasma. So they're not saying literally no thing. They're saying it was in a state with no matter, energy, space, or time, right? A quantum state. So, you know, this straw man has been done. Don't forget, this was just a year ago. I've had this one on my list for ages, but it was a year ago. So he knows that people have been pushing back about this. Oh, you think a universe came from nothing, straw man, for ages. He's been corrected again and again and again, and he still trots it out there. And I think the reason why he trots it out there is because it appeals to his base. It appeals to the people that he's talking about. So, you know,
adds to that argument that not only did the universe explode into being out of nothing, it did so with extreme precision.
It didn't explode. It didn't explode. So this is the kind of crap. He's debated with Sean Carroll, right? This is the thing. But these are the talking points that are popular for his audience. And he refuses to correct himself. He absolutely refuses. Because it is popular with them. He can get them all riled up. It is so dishonest. It didn't explode. It was a rapid expansion. Stop. Seriously, stop. This is the reason why we have creationists. You come and talk to them and they say, oh, well, if there was an explosion, where's the remnants of the explosion? It's like, wasn't an explosion. Come on.
Hawking, again, an atheist, said this. He said, if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million, a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. So why was that expansion rate so precisely fine?
Well, we don't know it was finely tuned. We could have had like 10 billion collapses before the universe started expanding. How do we know that there wasn't 10 billion collapses before the universe started expanding, as we know it, the local presentation of the universe? We don't. That's the whole thing, Frank. We don't know that's not true. It could have collapsed a trillion times. And then, you know, when the values were right, it started expanding as we know it now. That's the point. We don't know. Maybe the universe formed in such a way that it couldn't have had any other expansion rate. Right? It's like saying, well, if the dam's wall was slightly lower, it wouldn't have the volume of water it has in it and it would all spill over. Yeah. No shit. But we don't know if that could have formed any other way. Maybe it had to be that way. We don't know. You don't know. Holy crack.
Fine-tuned to bring forth the universe we have here. It seems like it was designed, because if it was slightly off in either direction, we wouldn't be here. So when we have a universe exploded into being out of nothing, and then
didn't explode, wasn't from nothing.
And it doing so in such extreme precision, we can draw some conclusions about what that cause was. Space.
No, you can't. And we don't know its extreme precision, right? There are some values that physicists have said, hey, they could be better for a more stable universe. If the expansion rate was slightly slower, you know, we would get a stable universe, one that's not constantly expanding.
Time and matter had a beginning. So what could have caused space-time and matter? Only something outside of space-time and matter. In other words, the cause must be spaceless, timeless.
Well, we don't know that the universe had a beginning to start with. So if you're saying what was before time, that's a dumb question. That's a nonsensical question. There's no before to have a before time. It's wild. and he's using William Lane Craig's thing here. Just say there is another universe outside of this one, like a larger cosmos. That could have time, and it's not our time. It's completely separate and removed, as per Sean Carroll's like parent-child universe. Another hypothesis that's been posited is that we're inside of a black hole in another universe. And maybe our black holes lead to that universe. We don't know. None of this stuff we know. But like the amount of assumptions being made based upon incorrect information, you know, an explosion from nothing is just ridiculous. And this is a year ago. He's been corrected time and time again. He's not interested in actually representing the science fairly and honestly and truthfully. He's interested in appealing to these catchphrases. And you'll hear them all throughout.
Immaterial, powerful to create the universe out of nothing. Also personal, to make a choice to create, because impersonal forces don't make choices. You know, gravity doesn't decide whether or not it's going to pull something to the...
Yeah, so how do you know it wasn't just a natural occurrence in another universe or in the black hole of a parent universe? You don't. You're just saying, hey, it had to make a choice. Why? Why does a choice, like gravity doesn't make a choice, correct? Universes may form as a result of natural occurrences. You don't know. I don't know. But, you know, if we don't know, then God.
Ground, it just does it. But a personal force can decide to create something, to go from nothingness to a state of creation. So the cause had to be personal. Also, the cause had to be...
No, it doesn't have to be personal. Any more than, you know, the forces working upon a pebble on a cliff eventually hits to overcome the friction and the pebble falls down the cliff. It doesn't have to decide on that. Okay, it doesn't have to. Like I said, if there's a larger cosmos, then it could have just been a result of natural forces in that cosmos. If it was that the universe didn't begin and was in an atemporal state, like no time, number one, while they say eternal, that's not really eternal, right? Atemporal just means no time. So it's instant and lasts forever at the same time. But if there is something happening that causes universes to form, it could be in an atemporal state until it actually forms. And then it forms the local presentation of time. It doesn't need to be a personal thing making a decision.
Intelligent to have a mind to make a choice and also to fine-tune the universe in its expansion. And so I always ask people, Kirk, I ask people these questions. When you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of? And everyone goes, well, God. You say, how do you know it's the Christian God, Frank? And my answer is, we don't yet. I mean, this cause could be Allah or some other theistic or deistic being.
Yeah, and this is sort of the dodgy things that William Lane Craig does. He sort of tries to debate Christianity and then goes to this nebulous sort of deist experience. But, you know, all of these assumptions, no, I don't know that the cause has to be more powerful. The effect can be more powerful than the cause. For instance, if you have dynamite there, right, and somebody lights it, well, the cause isn't that powerful, but the outcome can be. You know, if you split an atom, for instance, the cause is simply the catalyst that allows it to change its state. That's all. So it's shooting the particle into that atom and splitting it. Well, the effect, the cause isn't much, right? The cause is tiny. The effect is massive. So no, it's not necessary that the cause is more powerful than the effect. No. No, that's not a thing. Yes, the energy involved has to be the same. Sure. But, you know, you can't create energy out of nothing. Energy can be neither created nor destroyed. So God violates physics. Okay. They appeal to a miracle then. Well, okay. But we know that can't happen. So I don't know why we believe that. And we don't think that the universe came from literally nothing. You can have a quantum field without space, time, energy, matter, and we call it nothing, but it is something. It's a quantum field. So no, all of this is absolute nonsense and making a whole bunch of stuff based upon William Lane Craig's assumptions in kind of his philosophical, you know, Kalam cosmological argument with Craigisms on the end.
But if the evidence shows that a man predicted and accomplished his own resurrection from the dead, then we can say that the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,990 years ago is the same being in whose divine nature created the universe out of nothing.
Why? Why is that? How do you know? Like, just because somebody resurrected or appeared to resurrect, even if they did, let's just say he resurrected, right? How do you know that was the same being that created the universe? How do you know it wasn't aliens that came down and resurrected him and then teleported him out of the crypt? How do you know that? They don't. They're just making this crap up.
And we haven't gotten to the evidence for the resurrection yet.
Yeah.
But if we have a being that looks like God, and when you add the third argument in, by the way, the moral argument, that if there's a moral standard out there, a law that we're obligated to obey, for example, that you ought to love people and not murder them, then there has to be a moral lawgiver. And that would be another act.
Every time, right? Yeah, and that's true. And you know, the funny thing is, Jedi, that would fit more with the problem of evil. You know, if the God that created everything is Cthulhu, well, that would explain why there's so much suffering in the world, because that God likes things to suffer. You know, like I presume he's sleeping in R'lyeh at the moment, but you know, that is a God that will just outright cause chaos and mayhem and causes suffering wherever he goes. You know, it's kind of like, yeah, fits more.
We could say about this being. He's not only spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent, he's also moral. He's the standard of morality. So here we have 7 attributes for the God of the Bible, and we haven't.
We have 7 attributes that I've basically made up. Yeah, okay. You know, none of this has any compelling evidence for it. None of them do. You know, he's the moral standard. He's the one that created the universe. He's the fine tuner. He's this, he's that. They've got none of this he's actually shown in any demonstrable way. He's doing the, what is it? I've been hearing this phrase lately, and it's kind of this really dodgy thing, a cumulative case, right? Cumulative case, like it means that, hey, a lot of bad evidence piles up into good evidence. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's all bad evidence. Like, stop. A whole bunch of circumstantial evidence does not add up to physical evidence, right? So if you're trying somebody, a whole bunch of circumstantial evidence doesn't make, you know, eyewitness testimony or physical, you know, forensics evidence. It doesn't. Okay, it's still just bad evidence.
Even opened the Bible yet, right? This is called natural theology. We're reasoning from effect to cause. If there's a creation, that's an effect. We're reasoning to cause a creator. If there's
no, you're not reasoning from effect to cause. You have the cause first. This is apologetics. You have the cause, and you're linking up things that other people have discovered, like, you know, Stephen Hawking, with the cause that you've already determined it to be. That is what apologetics does. That's entirely what apologetics does. Wow. No, this is not reasoning from effect to cause. No, science reasons from effect to cause. It goes, what do we observe around us? How do we tell what is it that caused this? It's rigorous. It's reliable. It basically, you know, reasonable. It basically doesn't do this. But you have the cause already, Turek. Wow, what a screenshot. I'm gonna take a screenshot of this one. This is great. I don't think I've paused a Turek video at a better time, quite frankly. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. Where's my pictures? I bet Turek would be fantastic at gurning. If you're unaware, gurning is a competition they have in the United Kingdom to see who can make the stupidest face. It's great. It's fantastic. Like, national pastime is like looking stupid.
Design, that's the effect. We're reasoning to cause a designer. Moral law written on the heart, that's the effect. Reasoning to cause a moral law.
There's no, like, nothing is written on my heart, sir. Nothing is written on my heart. And that's not how we understand moral law. We understand empathy. We understand reciprocity. It's not moral law. Because when somebody disobeys morality, there's no morality police that God sends to stop them. Okay, this isn't a thing. Ugh.
Giver. And then when we look at evidence for the resurrection, we can say, yes, God must have risen Jesus from the dead. So that's the first argument, or I should say the first question you need to answer, does God exist?
Yeah. If I know that so many people are listening to us right now going, oh, I got to remember those 7 things, those qualities. Where do I find those? Where
in the book, I don't have enough faith to
Buy my DVDs.
be an atheist.
I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. What do you say, Frank, when someone says to you, they don't believe the Bible? And because they don't believe the Bible, don't share the Bible, don't quote from the Bible, that's not going to be accepted as valid proof.
I would say, why don't you believe it? I would ask them.
Well, we know the origins of the Bible, and we know that there are things in the Bible that were interpolated by the early church. So, for instance, the long ending of Mark, I think it's Mark 16. There's a long ending and a short ending. We thought that the long ending was the correct one, but then we found earlier manuscripts with the short ending. So they added it later on, and it's not contemporary to the times. It was written anywhere from 30 to 70 years afterwards. That's a substantial amount of time. So no, that's why we don't believe the Bible. Plus, we don't know who wrote the Gospels. And yeah, apparently Paul was around at the time. He never met Jesus, and not alive. So we don't really have a lot of trust in this, because it is just words of a people trying to start a religion.
I want to know where they're coming from and why do they think that, right? And so if they say, well, I can't believe the Bible because it's been changed throughout the centuries, I'm going to borrow a line from our mutual friend, Greg Kokel. What do you mean it's been changed throughout the centuries?
Well, Christians have added stuff to it. It basically, there was a whole bunch of Gospels and scriptures and manuscripts that they kind of edited into one. I mean, it didn't start out as the Bible with all these things together. Like, there was stuff left out that people claimed was true. They basically put in everything they think they can get away with. At the end of the day, that's how I see the Bible.
What evidence do you have for that? Have you looked into the Bible manuscript evidence for yourself? I guarantee you the person's not going to say, yeah, just last night I was up reading a book about the Byzantine line of manuscripts, right? Nobody.
No, but we have experts in the subject, like our friend Dr. Kip, who studies these things relentlessly. He, if you don't know, he fucking loves the Bible. The man has studied the Dead Sea Scrolls, like the actual scroll. Like, he is really, really, really educated on the subject, and I trust him and generally trust the consensus of the experts on it. And they agree we don't know who wrote the Gospels. And they agree that, hey, there were interpolations into the Bible. I do trust Bart Ehrman, because he is really good on the Bible. I think that he has a point when Bart Ehrman says, hey, we don't know for sure if there's anything else that was interpolated, which was added by the early church, that wasn't in there originally. Why? Because we don't have the originals. So there may be, and you know, to his credit, Bart Ehrman says, yeah, we think that we've got it mostly right through studying various scrolls, but we don't know for sure. So that's kind of unreliable. I'm sorry. It just is.
I was going to say that, right? Because people today believe things based on slogans, not because they've investigated, Kirk. So I always ask them, what evidence do you have for that position? And then you can say, have you ever considered that we know the Bible has not been changed throughout the centuries, because we have over 5,000 manuscripts that we can compare and recreate the original with more than 99% accuracy. Now, that doesn't prove the Bible.
Yeah, I think that 99% accuracy, well, we don't know for sure. That's the thing, because if there is an earlier manuscript, like if we can find an earlier we don't know these were the first ones. We don't know. Was there anything different in the earlier one? We don't know, because we don't have it. That's basically it. We don't have any earlier manuscripts than past a certain point. That's all. I don't know what to tell you. So as Ehrman points out, as Dr. Ehrman points out, if there is an earlier manuscript with something different, it could be different in there. We don't know. Not for sure. That's the problem with the historical readings. You can go back a certain distance, but you never know absolutely sure what happened.
It's true, but it does show that what they wrote down, we still have. The next question is the Bible telling the truth?
No person in biblical scholarship thinks that the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John were the originals. Nobody thinks that. Like, nobody. Okay? They don't, nobody claims that they were the originals at all. Absolutely not. No.
And with regard to the resurrection, which is the second question you need to answer to show that Christianity is true, I always point out to people that the New Testament writers, all of them, with the exception of Luke, were all Jewish believers in Yahweh. They already thought they were God's chosen people. They had been believers in Yahweh as long as they had lived, and they had, generations going back. They're sacrificing lambs to Yahweh. And then suddenly Jesus comes along. They toss all that and they say, this guy predicted and accomplished his own resurrection from the dead while claiming to be God.
Yeah, but that's like saying, hey, all of the Mormons used to be Protestants and they all believed in the, Jesus and only Jesus. And then this guy came along and, said that he found Egyptian writings and found, these golden tablets, and suddenly they just believed it. Well, it had to have happened. Oh, objective ethics. No, that's not Ehrman. Ehrman isn't a mythicist. You're thinking of Richard Carrier, mate. You're thinking of Richard Carrier, buddy. That's not Ehrman. Ehrman's very, he's not a mythicist. He thinks that he's the main person that thinks, like, sort of says, hey, there's enough evidence to say this was actually a person, kind of thing. Oh, you think that's too far? Oh, I got you. I don't think so, mate. I don't. No, sorry, I misread that. That's my fault. Yeah, I just simply go with the consensus of scholars that say he was a real person. I don't. To me, it doesn't matter, because even if Jesus was a was a person and an itinerant rabbi, it doesn't give any credence to that any of the miracles are done, and that's the important part. If he was just a rabbi starting a cult, a doomsday cult, I'm fine with that. And I don't know. I've got no way to tell. I've heard the mythicist arguments, and I get why they're a thing. But like an overwhelming amount of biblical scholars say, hey, he was probably a person, right? Because there's not only, we're not just relying, for Jesus, we're not just relying on the Gospels that it happened. We're also relying on a number of historians who wrote about and talked to a guy called Simon, who was the brother of Jesus, right? Like, there is a lot of evidence to show that at least they talked to people who thought he was a real person, right? So that's not secondhand accounts, and it's not biblical stories. That is, these historians, I believe one's Josephus talked to Simon, and I think Tacitus talked to a group of people. I can't remember, but anyway, there are some actual external historians who mention Simon, the brother of Jesus. So that's, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that was a real person. Now, they could be making that up. There could have been no person and somebody's lying and saying they are the brother. Sure, okay, but it suggests to the scholars that that was a real person, even if the accounts were made up. So that's why they've come down on that side. It's just not up in the air and, they've just decided on, that he was a real person, just 50-50. It is sort of a sort of supported. I just agree with the consensus of scholars, because they know way more than I do. Like, trust me, Kip corrects me all the time, and I do like it, because he knows what he's talking about. I do pay attention to him, because he is very knowledgeable about it. So yeah, Oh, look, both Tacitus and Josephus are used by Christians to say, hey, there was a Christ kind of thing and he did all these miracles. They never reported that, right? Tacitus only reported that there are a bunch of people who claimed that Jesus was the Messiah, and Tacitus sort of said essentially the same thing. There's people around worshipping this guy as a Messiah. So they definitely were real historians at the time. They took history. They were Josephus was Jewish, very fervently Jewish all of his life, and I think Tacitus was Roman, so they weren't anything to do with Christianity.
That was something a Jew didn't think could happen. They didn't think one guy would rise from the dead, and they didn't think anybody claimed to be God. That would be blasphemy. Yet here are these guys going to their deaths saying this is what happened. What could have caused them to do that? Why would they do that?
Yeah.
They wouldn't do that. They didn't get sex, money, or power for saying Jesus had resurrected from the dead. They got the opposite. They got abused. They got persecuted. They got killed for.
Yeah, and you could say the same with Mormons. Why would all these people say that they found the tablets and talked to the angel Moroni? All they got was persecuted. Yeah, they did. But this is what happens when people start religions. They basically get a lot of attention. And some people just love the fucking attention, don't they? Some people love that attention, even if it's bad. They get a lot of attention. They get a lot of people praising them. They get a lot of power over others. And you're going, oh, but they get persecuted. Yeah, some people don't care if they get persecuted. They just want power over others. That's all they care about. That is something that we see all the time, especially with people starting cults. They don't care that they're persecuted. They have followers. And sometimes that's all they want.
Saying this happened.
Yeah.
And I normally will say this, and this is going to sound weird for you people out there that believe the Bible's inerrant like I do, but stick with me. It's not heresy. Christianity is not true.
Well, calm down, everybody. I'm not a heretic. Please don't burn me at the stake. Turek's like, he knows his audience, right? He knows that Kirk Cameron is a young earth creationist and a fundamentalist, that he believes in the absolute inerrancy of the Bible.
Because a series of documents we put under one binding we call the Bible says is true. In fact, Christianity would be true if the Bible never existed. People go, what do you mean? I said, do you realize there were thousands of Christians before a line of the New Testament was ever written? Why? Because Christianity did not originate with a book.
Yeah, and conversely, Christianity still is false no matter what the book says, right? So he's talking of a distinction between epistemology and ontology. So ontology is the actuality of things, how things are, and epistemology is the reasons for believing. So he's basically saying, hey, well, the Bible can be completely wrong, and it would still be true that Jesus rose from the dead. But conversely, the people in the Bible could have written exactly what they've seen, and Jesus didn't rise from the dead, right? Like, it's not a case of, well, this must be true even though the Bible, it's true or false based upon its own merits. Not, I do agree with him, it's true or false based upon regardless of what the Bible says. I do agree with that. But the thing that he's leaving out is it can be false as well. He's just saying, oh, it's true even if the Bible is completely wrong. It can be false as well. Like,
Christianity originated with an event, the resurrection.
And the fact that part of his epistemology, which is the reasons why we believe things or know things, he's basically saying, well, even if the epistemology is unsound, then it's still true. But the problem is the only way you get to believing if something is true is the epistemology. So he's basically saying, hey, we can throw out the Bible and still believe. Yeah, that's a point, but should you? Like, if you don't have a reason for thinking this, which, what evidence outside of the Bible do we have for the resurrection of Jesus? Nothing. Zero. Zip. Nil. Nada. Absolutely nothing. There is not a single reason aside from the Bible, right? That is the only reason. So, throwing out the Bible, what else do you have to base that on? Nothing. So his point is not a good one.
There would be no series of books written in the first century by Jews claiming a man claimed to be God and rose from the dead unless a man really did claim to be God and really did rise from the dead. Because all they got was abuse for doing this, for saying this. So I put it this way.
Well, not all. They got followers, they got prestige. Paul was considered a very amazing man within the church, and he didn't even meet Jesus. And this whole thing of, well, they died for their beliefs, we don't know that. The early church says that, but we don't know if they did. The whole thing about, I believe it was Peter being crucified upside down, we don't know that. Like, we don't. There's no historical record of it. Did they recant? No one's saying. One of them was stabbed. Was that due to religion? We don't know. He might have stolen something for all we know. We don't know. And I often point out the similarity between the Mormons, who say that Joseph Smith was martyred. He died for his beliefs. Well, he died trying to escape a mob when he was imprisoned for destroying a printing press. Does that count as martyrdom? I don't think so. They think so.
The New Testament writers did not create the resurrection. The resurrection created the New Testament writers. There would be no New Testament documents written down by Jews in the first century unless this resurrection really happened.
No, that's absolute BS. Absolutely wrong. There would be, you could use this argument for other religions. Well, there would be no Quran if Muhammad didn't actually have visions from God and cut the moon in half. There would be no Book of Mormon if Joseph Smith didn't actually find the tablets and talk with the angel Moroni. This is a terrible argument, right? Especially when you're sort of talking about a religion, and especially when the people of Judea, because don't forget, the first Roman-Jewish war happened very shortly after. Part of the religion was this doomsday thing of, we're going to, throw the shackles of the Roman Empire from us. We're going to overcome all of this stuff. The new kingdom of God is about to be established. Part of their sort of thing was rebellion against the Romans, who were occupying them at the time. So, there's a million reasons as to why these guys would promote their religion, and it's not just because it happened. They also might have tried to mobilize people against the Romans, right? And that is we see that. We can see that in Iran, for instance, when the Shah was installed by America and then overthrown, they used religion to do so. It is the Ayatollahs, the religious believers, that overthrew it, and now we have the lovely theocracy in Iran that we're used to. But religion has been used to overthrow oppressors and conquerors and occupiers for a very long time. There's other reasons they may have done this. So yeah, I don't think you can just go, oh well, if these people did that, it had to have happened. No more than if the Book of Mormon exists because Joseph Smith had to find all of these miracles, or the Quran was written because Muhammad had to fly to the moon and split the moon in half. No, that does not follow.
Yeah, they wrote it down because they saw it, not the other way around. They didn't invent it. There's no motive to invent it. They had
What did they see exactly? And even if we take everything at its word, what did they see? Right? Because no one saw the resurrection directly. Okay, nobody says, oh, well, I was there with his dead body and suddenly he had a gasp and came back to life. So what did they see? Let's put aside Paul for a second, because a vision on the Damascus Road isn't really compelling for me. But, what did these authors see? They saw a guy crucified, put in a tomb, ostensibly. Okay, we can talk about that one later, but put in a tomb. And then the women saw the tomb empty, came back, and then a guy they didn't recognize claimed to be Jesus, but they didn't recognize him. So what did they see? Because they didn't see a resurrection. That's not what they saw. Right? They didn't see somebody come back to life. They saw a body go missing and then a guy turn up they didn't recognize, who then they felt were Jesus. And, you know, then you get the other stuff like the parade of saints rising up from graves and the earthquakes and things like that that nobody else mentioned. Thanks, Matthew.
Motive to say it wasn't true, Kirk, from a temporal perspective, than to say it was true.
Right.
So, and then, you know, easily the Jews and the Romans could have squashed Christianity by going to the tomb and taking Jesus' body out. They couldn't do that either. Why? Because he was still using his body. The tomb was empty. Christianity could have been shut down by the two biggest opponents of it at the time. They couldn't do it. Why?
Well, I don't know about the tomb. I mean, I don't even know there was a tomb necessarily. I mean, it's very strange that Paul, throughout all of his writings, and he's trying to write to people to, you know, sort of bolster their faith and things, that he doesn't mention the empty tomb once. It's the single biggest, supposedly biggest evidence for God is this empty tomb, but Paul doesn't mention it. It's quite strange. You know, and he apparently went around and talked to all of these witnesses. It's not mentioned. Isn't that a bit strange? That you go around, talk to all of these witnesses who saw it all happen, and not one of them says, hey, there was a tomb, we put a body in it with a big ass rock over it, and, you know, suddenly it was empty. You would expect one person to... Anyway. Oh, hi, Kip. I was talking about you, so I must have made you show up. So, welcome, welcome. I'm just saying, with the Kip, I go with consensus of the biblical scholars, and that's what I go with. I don't try to make up my own. You know, I will talk about things that they talk about and maybe say my opinion on it, but, you know, when we're talking about what we know about the time and what we're certain of it about that time, I just go with the consensus of the experts because, you know, I don't have the necessary experience to make up my own shit. Like, I just don't.
Because the tomb is empty. He had risen from the dead.
All this is such great and compelling evidence.
Oh, can I say one other thing?
Yeah.
People don't believe in resurrections because they've never seen one. You shouldn't expect to see a lot of miracles. Why? Because if they occurred all the time, they wouldn't be miracles, right? They have to be rare events to get our attention.
Well, apparently they occurred all the time in the ancient Levant. People, you know, Lazarus was coming back to life. Jesus was coming back to life. Saints were coming back to life. Apparently it was just all the time back then. You know, there's leprosy being cured left and blindness being cured right. Apparently there were still miracles back then, Frank. Why wouldn't they be miracles now? If somebody came in, said, I'm Jesus, and went to a children's hospital and cured all the blind children, are you saying that we would just go, yeah, he did a lot of it, can't be a miracle? You know, come on, man, seriously? This is just an excuse for why God wouldn't show you. This is just a divine hiddenness excuse. Oh, well, why couldn't God just convince all of us right now? Oh, because if he did so, it would be mundane. Oh, come on, dude. Seriously? You think if everybody, like every child with blindness was instantly cured by somebody, it would just be a, oh well, yeah, no, that happened too much. I don't care. All right, whatever.
And the greatest miracle in the Bible, ladies and gentlemen, is not the resurrection. The greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If that verse is true, every other verse is at least possible, including the verses that talk about him rising from the dead. Okay, so we have evidence that even atheists are admitting that the universe had a beginning. They don't think it's God, but what?
No. We don't know that the universe had it. We think it had a beginning. It has been posited. Yeah, that's one hypothesis. But even the Bohr-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, that Guth said, yes, it details back to the presumed origin, the expansion point. But because our physics is limited, we don't know for sure that it had a beginning. We don't know. We don't know, Frank. And this is stuff that he keeps saying, even though he's been corrected like a million times. Even though he's saying, hey, it's an explosion from nothing, which is such an inaccurate description of the Big Bang, right? Like, it's so inaccurate. He knows who his audience is. I mean, he's sitting there talking to them. And he knows what they want to hear. And this is the thing about Frank Turek. He panders to his audience. He panders to what people want to hear. He's kind of just a showman. That's what he is. He's a showman at heart. So, you know, he knows this is inaccurate. He still says it anyway because, you know, it's Kirk Cameron's audience. They're young Earth creationists. They eat this shit up.
What else could it be? If the universe had a beginning, a resurrection's possible.
That's right. What's the difference, though, Frank, between...
No. If the universe had a beginning, it still could be naturalistic. And that if the universe was created is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. If it's created, if it had a beginning, if this, yeah, but if I was a millionaire, I would be able to buy myself, a new chair or so. It's like that if is doing a whole load of heavy lifting there. Like, seriously. There's that's not a reason to think that it actually occurred. Just saying, well, if then. Wow.
Understanding that Christianity is true and becoming a child of God.
Well, there's a difference between belief that and belief in. You can know that Christianity is true. The demons know that, according to James, but they don't trust in Jesus. They know intellectually it's true, but they don't trust in him. So in order to become a Christian, you got to go from belief that to belief in.
Can I just point out, this is exactly a contradiction to what he said earlier, which is like, you ask atheists. So what he said earlier was, if you ask atheists if they knew there was a Christ, if they knew there was a God, would they become a Christian? And they say no, right? And as I pointed out, hey, it depends on the God. Is that God worth worshipping? Are they a benevolent God, or are they an arse, like the Old Testament kind of Yahweh kind of thing? So he's now outlining, hey, just because you believe that a God exists doesn't make you a Christian. You answered your own question right here. Like, it's incredible that Turek points out, how dishonest atheists are for knowing a God. They don't automatically become a Christian, and then directly points out, that just because there's a God, that doesn't make you a Christian. You can believe that a God exists. That doesn't make you a Christian. Does he not listen to what he says? It's incredible.
Just like you do when you ask somebody to marry you, right? You've got to go from belief that this person would be a good wife to trust in. That's what you got to do with Jesus. You got to repent of your sins and trust in what he has provided for you, which is not only forgiveness for everything you've done, but giving you his righteousness. So you're not only forgiven, you're given his righteousness. And so the scriptures talk about that at great length, that we're sinners and we need a savior. And he died to rescue us from our sins, and he's going to forgive us and give us his righteousness. That's what Christianity is all about. It's about grace. The greatest miracle.
Yeah, so again, and I'll just get rid of Frank. I hate it when he talks to the audience because he feels like he's talking at me, and I don't particularly want to talk to him unless I'm debating him maybe. But Frank Turek is basically, he's outlining why you wouldn't necessarily be a Christian if you know a God exists, which was his exact objection to what atheists say at the very start. And then he sort of makes these claims that, hey, he's offering you repentance and you've got to trust in him. Well, what if the God seems really untrustworthy? Just because I know this God exists doesn't mean I'm going to automatically trust in him. Job trusted in him and got absolutely burnt for it. So I don't know why, we automatically would do that. And it depends on the God. And, it's this whole thing of, you've got to trust in first. But a lot of this is emotional reasoning and emotional appeals and trying to manipulate people emotionally. The thing that got me most angry about this particular discussion was Frank Turek sort of saying, hey, wait till people have had a tragedy, or whether they, plant seeds and wait for a tragedy. So, sort of prime people for tragedies so they will turn to God when it happens is just disgusting. He is a disgusting person. He basically says, people like, questioning God because of the treatment of LGBTQI people. Yeah, it's a cognitive dissonance. Yes. You want to believe God is good? You have these friends and they're being treated awfully by Christians. How does that square? You know that they're hurt and they're suffering. How does that square away? That is the kind of cognitive dissonance that we want to take advantage of. Having the idea that God is all benevolent and does massacres on tribes people because they're on land you want. That is a cognitive dissonance. Okay, and William Lane Craig, for one, has just got to lean into, well, that was a good thing, what happened. And then you can proceed from there. You can kind of go, well, would it be good today? If it was good then, why isn't it good today? And my heart goes out to Palestine and all of the people suffering there. I hate Hamas. Hamas sucks, but that doesn't mean that people should suffer. But yeah, that's why I get annoyed by these people. That's why I do get annoyed, because it's that level of, and I pointed out last week, Ray Comfort was doing the same. He said, oh, I want to switch their intellectual thinking to emotional. And it's like, so you're emotionally manipulating people. That's what that means. When they try to get you emotionally, that's what it means. Instead of appealing to you intellectually and giving good reasons for a God. Appealing to that wishful thinking. Oh, well, don't you want to go to heaven? I don't even know that heaven's real, but if it were, but I don't base my what I believe on what I wish or what I'm afraid of or things. I have to base it upon what is evident and what I can find support for. So yeah, all of this is sort of well, don't question, don't have doubts, use your heart, don't think with your head. And Christians eat it up, and I don't know why. It's wild. I'm sorry to hear that, Wes. They ask him if they can pray to him, nation. Yeah, and I mean, Christians have done that kind of thing. There's been some documented cases of them trying to convert people before they die, and I think it's pretty horrible. I have to remind myself that they think they're doing the right thing. They think they're saving somebody, and that's the only thing that won't make me puke when it happens. That they have been convinced by their religion that they are helping this person, and it's kind of like, okay, oof. Best deathbed words I've ever heard was Voltaire, who said he's the priest, allegedly. I mean, this is reported to be true. I don't know if it's actually historically correct, but it's a nice story. The priest goes, you're on your deathbed. Won't you, repute the devil? Won't you cast him out and accept God? Won't you, condemn the devil, kind of thing? And Voltaire apparently said, Pastor, this is no time for be making enemies. And I just loved that, But yeah, that's the only thing. But at the same time, we have to say, hey, what you're doing is really wrong. Like, this emotional manipulation is really wrong. We want people not to make decisions and beliefs out of fear and wishful thinking and what they want to believe is true. That is what gets us into trouble. I mean, I can point to the way America is going at the moment, where you have statistical reports being produced and then the person making them gets fired. We don't want to make decisions based upon what we want to be true and what we hope to be true and what we wish were true and, things like that. We want to make them upon the best substantive evidence that we have. And so, that is really silly. But yeah, that was another Fundamentalist Fails. I always love a Friday. I always love going through this with people. And thank you for being here to cheer me on, laugh at Turek, laugh at Cameron. It's really kind of hilarious just how bad their arguments are. I mean, for Frank Turek to refute himself at the end is just perfect. Absolutely perfect. But do take care. Please support Palestine, support our LGBTQI brothers and sisters, support each other if you're going through a hard time. Absolutely. This whole thing about atheists don't care if you're going through a hard time, get out of here, man. Seriously. I care about my family, my friends, my community. I do care. Other people do care as well. We do. It's just a damn lie. But yeah, Turek, But do be kind to yourself. Yeah. If you are having a hard time, can't handle stuff, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. It's not good for you. Be kind to yourself and go, hey, everybody has a hard time. They need a break. We need to rest and recoup. That's okay. Don't blame yourself, right? Things are tense. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to each other. Be kind to Palestine. Palestinians, they're not all Hamas. They're not all horrible. Let's not wipe them off the face of the earth. They're a people with a rich culture. Please be kind. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody. Okay.